Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Today's June 8th, a work session. Our mayor's running a little late, a few minutes. She'll join us shortly. And I think, Karen, if you don't mind starting the meeting, please. Karen, you muted, sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First up, we're going to be going a little out of order while we wait for our friends from Sustainable Westchester. But
sorry, Karen, I'm sorry. I think Maddie's trying to say something about the pledge. And thank you, Maddie.
oh,
I totally
we
forgot
were
about
just
that. Yes.
yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
If everyone joins me for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Maddie.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the flag as well. So as we wait for our friends from Sustainable Westchester, we're going to move on to our second agenda item tonight, which is an update from our Director of Public Works, Paul Fraioli. And we have Colleirs Engineering too. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Paul so he can tell you the latest and greatest on our five-corner update improvements on the five corners.
Good evening, board. Thank you, Karen. So with me this evening is Richard Andrea in the background there. They're both on the same screen, and Philip Gotthelf from Collier Engineering. They are in the same office of Collier Engineering as Pete Rasulo, who you do know, who's been in front of us a number of years ago when we looked at the intersection and various options there. And he also came back in a work session environment a few months back when we initiated the resurrection of their contract to create contract documents for rehabilitation of the Five Corners intersection. But before we get into Richard's and Philip's portion of the presentation, I think it would probably be a good idea, because I've been away for this topic from you for a little, almost 2 months now, to kind of bring you up to speed on some of the things that have transpired since. And we have Dale on here too, because some of the stuff I'm going to tell you about is finance related. And so she can jump right in as soon as I maybe go off the rail or misspeak a little bit. So as you know, this project was decided by the board to get resurrected after the 2022 capital and operating budget were adopted. So in order to fund the project, what we did was we put a tab on a placeholder on the annual capital project of streetscape and road improvement projects and sidewalk and curb projects that we do every year, and we fund with a combination of board approved borrow and CHIPS money. So that fund with some carryover and funding from the board at the adoption of the 2022 budget was roughly $1 million. We have pulled some of that money out and created a PO for an annual bid contractor to do some paving, much needed paving in the village. And that's transpired in about the last month. If you've noticed, we paved Revolutionary Road all the way to the Briarcliff border. We paved a compromised section of Chemis right off Revolutionary. And we also went into Scarborough Circle right off of Revolutionary. So we basically took care of that whole corridor on the heels of doing Upper Revolutionary Road and Rockledge a couple of years ago. So that entire area is all in good shape. We also went to another road tributary to Highland Avenue, parallel to some of the roads we did over the last couple of years off of South Highland, and this time we did Cedar Place. It's a little dead end road that really doesn't get a lot of traffic, but in conjunction with that, it really hasn't gotten much attention other than maintenance over the last 30 years. So now we actually did a complete road restoration of that road. And I know those folks are happy about that as well. Any additional paving that we're going to undertake this year will be only after we get these contract documents produced, bid, and awarded, and we know exactly how much money will be left over out of that capital project. Right now, the project that we are going to discuss with our consultants this evening is estimated right around where we talked about it 2 months ago at about $700,000 to $750,000. That's about 150 to 200,000 less than is in a capital project right now. So we feel fairly certain that, and that is an inflation-based estimate, because I know a lot of folks have been concerned with that of late. So we do have enough money in the capital project, we believe, unless something extraordinary happens. We're fairly confident that what we're going to present to you tonight will come within a budget that is already have an approved borrow associated with it. Dale did that at the last meeting, if you recall, where she defined it for this project. Now, with that in mind, once again, for the public and to say again for the board, we took what Collier, who was Mazer Engineering at the time, but they've been absorbed by Collier Engineering. We took at the time, which was a concept plan of ADA improvements with some signal work, and we turned it into what you're going to see tonight, the draft contract documents that we're calling the Main Street, Spring Street intersection improvement. It is essentially turning the 5-corner intersection into a 4-way intersection with new signals, some new technology behind those signals, which I'm not going to steal Richard or Philip's fire, but it's pretty neat and wasn't available the last time we presented this as a project about 5 or 6 years ago. And I also discussed it with the police chief, and he liked the concept too on what that can offer. But again, Philip and Richard, I'll let you go into more detail about that. And in addition to the signal work, which we look to try to maintain a very time period type aesthetic, we're doing some bump out and ADA accessibility with some features that are really going to keep to the historic nature of the downtown, which again, I'm not going to steal the fire of the presentation. I'm going to let them do that. So all of these things we're looking to do, not just for ADA accessibility and walkability, but also for all the tributary and the traffic flow is going to also produce a level of service that's going to be slightly improved from what we have now and equal to that from the other options that were discussed in the past about level of service, which is really the main goal, and one of the goals that we also committed to undertake when we sat with the DOT and talked about what this intersection's impact would be to the work we were looking to do with the road diet program. So I know that's a lot of information about one project, but I just kind of wanted to tie it together to tell the public how we're going about this project. What we're going to present tonight, assuming you're all on board and give us the go-ahead to take this to final construction documents, are documents that we will review with Corporation Counsel. The funding is already in place for the entire capital project, and the next time I would be in front of you would be for authorization to bid. But what you're going to look at right now is contract documents that are pretty close to going out to bid, minus the specifications that go with it. But that's something they're working on concurrently. And Stuart, as soon as we get something together, I will send it to you for your final blessing. So with that, Richard DeAndrea and Philip Gotthelf from Collier Engineering, I turn it over to you. And I believe they're going to need someone to share the screen because they have a PowerPoint. And I ask that maybe questions get held to the end, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Philip Gotthelf, and I have Richard DeAndrea with me. Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? So we have a short presentation that we just want to share with you. Just kind of run through the plans that we've prepared so far. As Paul mentioned, they are pretty far along and almost ready for bid. So Philip's sharing the screen now, if you can see that. And So obviously everybody knows the 5-corner intersection at Main and Spring. Just gonna quickly buzz through a couple of things here. This is just a couple of the plans in our set, generic cover sheet and note sheet, and go through that. The details we do want to talk about with you a little bit. One of the big things about this project is the curb extensions at the corners. Philip, you can go to the next. So this is the detail for the curb extensions that we're looking to do, and we'll get into that in the plans a little bit. But just to point out a couple things, the width of the extensions does vary depending on where we are. However, the bollards that we're looking at doing is one of the things to control pedestrian movements around the intersection, make sure people are crossing where we want them to cross. That's one of the things that we want to look at in a little detail with you tonight as we get into it. And there'll be new curbing installed, some new treatments for along the sidewalk for aesthetics, and then the resurfacing of the intersection are all kind of shown on this detail. Go on. Just some more details. Again, the bollards are what we're showing right now on the plans are the bollards that you see here, but we have some options that we want to take a look at with you, which I think is starts in the next slide here. So these real lines, I don't know if you want to, Philip, you want to describe them a little bit.
Yes, they're all cast iron, powder coated bollards, and produced by a company, Reliance Foundry. All 4 that you see here are in accordance with Buy America provisions made in the United States, and they provide a variety of different styles. All of these are fluted down the sides, and all of them are available with the optional eye bolts and chains to prevent pedestrians from crossing between them.
Let me just jump in here real quick, Philip, if I may. Just so you know what the mindset here was to pick up on the aesthetic of the historical LED lamps that we have, the street posts, not head posts, not the overhead cobra heads that the LEDs that shine down, the LEDs in the lamp detail on the sidewalks. We were trying to pick up on that detail with the black powder coated bollards, because we could have used anything to keep the pedestrians channeled into the appropriate pedestrian lanes, but we chose to do something aesthetic that I think will, when we're all done, pick up on the light post, and it's also going to pick up on what we're going to eventually show you as the mast arms that hold the signals. And when you have all that black powder coated detail, it's going to look really nice. Sorry, Philip, go ahead.
Yes, and yes, so these are what are available from Reliance. We also have options for bollards that actually have lights in them. But before that, I did want to mention the different options that are available to anchor these bollards in. There are options for removable posts. If you ever want to take these down for a special event, they can be either locked in the ground, padlocked, or they can have a retractable blocking system that goes back into the ground. So another brand that makes bollard options is Holophane, and these actually have lights in them. So if you wanted to not only have matching the style of the lights, but also provide a little bit of illumination near the roadway, these options are available. And this is a short video produced by this company.
Bollards from Holophane. LED bollards are the perfect lighting solution for any decorative pedestrian walkway application. Creating seamless transition from streets to walkways with bollards in a variety of styles, including Hamilton, Columbia, Plymouth, North Yorkshire, Charleston, and Wadsworth. Match existing decorative poles to create a unified aesthetic. These durable cast aluminum bollards feature options like a pre-wired and labeled 3-position terminal block mounted in the base, field adjustable lumen output control, and a button-style photocell. Choose packages ranging from 512 to 3074 lumens, and select optional eyebolts. External GFI receptacles and a direct aerial base for added versatility and convenience. LED bollards from Holophane, an attractive, durable, and efficient
And as you saw, I don't know if you caught it in that video, but as with the other bollards we talked about, you can get the eye bolt option so that you can have the chains across the area, so that it prevents pedestrians from crossing where we don't want them to cross. So that's just one of the options also with these lighted ones.
And the main point of those bollards, outside of the lighting
Right.
and outside of the powder coated aesthetic to pick up on the street light and the mast arms, is to protect, and they do, protect the pedestrians while they are out in that safe haven bump out island that allows them to have a shorter crossing of the road, which is really what you see down there now, crudely as the candlesticks, the reflective candlesticks we have sticking in the concrete. That's essentially what these will do of a permanent nature.
So this plan here that you're seeing now is our construction plan showing the limits of the bump outs that we're proposing, and upgrading the pedestrian accommodations at each of the corners of the intersection there. I think you'll get a better handle of that when you see what of the changes to the crossings when you see the striping plan that's coming up. And I just want to, but we have a zoom in of that construction plan here. That you can see that we're really narrowing up the intersection at the crossing locations to make those crossings shorter, safer, provide more refuge area for the pedestrians. And then it's hard to see on here, but the bollard locations are shown in there in the brick
Imagery.
pattern area. So that's where those would go around the intersection. Anything else to add on that?
Just that we have brake opens for each curb ramp going around, and the improved radius will help slow down car traffic making turns to make it a more attractive environment for pedestrians. And this is just the limits of the paving going down Spring Street. Currently, it's a concrete surface that we're proposing to mill and replace with asphalt.
And if you're asking what this had to do with the intersection before you, Philip, you continue, is we have said all along that we were looking to enhance pedestrian access, particularly from Maple Place to the post office. And this facilitates that. There's no crosswalk there now, but there are a lot of people that do cross there. So we're looking to add that to the intersection scope by adding a ADA accessibility at all four corners of Maple Place. There's some there now that are a little antiquated, but this one puts a new one on the, it puts a crosswalk running east to west from Maple to the post office parking lot.
So next, we have our striping plan, which highlights the new pedestrian movements. So as a part of this, we are proposing new pedestrian push buttons. Then we'll see those in the traffic signal plan that follows. I have some zoomed in shots of this.
So I think, you saw how we were bumping out those corners. You can see that some of these pedestrian crossings are much shorter than they are today, which helps in several things. It helps with your pedestrian safety. It helps with the time to cross, which gives you potentially more availability for vehicle traffic as well. And just overall safety at the intersection. So.
And the bump outs also give you enhanced visibility, putting people in front of the parked cars on the side on Main Street.
Right.
So next we have our signal plan. And so we're proposing to put in pedestrian button activations for each movement. Currently, it's all pre-timed, so pedestrians can only walk when the signal changes on its own cycle. But we are proposing both a new signal system that will be able to adapt to traffic in real time, as well as pedestrian buttons that will allow people to signal when they want to cross a particular movement.
I'm sorry, what does a gap mean?
A gap for.
Yeah,
Did we say gap? know what we're
You
referring
said
to.
that can create a gap, or did I misunderstand? Sorry for interrupting.
I think we were, maybe when I was saying that the shorter crossings are gonna could provide some additional green time back to the cars, because your crossing time doesn't have to be as long. Is that maybe that we were referring to?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
This is just a zoomed in view of that signal plan. There's going to be all new signal poles here. The way the signal will operate, you'll have, I guess, 3 different phases at the intersection ultimately, with pedestrians that will be able to cross concurrently with various phases. So it'll be a little bit of a different operation than it is today. Overall, I think it'll be an improvement to the overall operation as well.
Let me just, while you have that one up there, Philip, thank you. While that's up there, I just want to point out one of the things that was critiqued when we were looking at various options a number of years back was, what's this going to do to our parking? This plan, so
Paul, I'm
that's a
sorry.
good thing, regardless of bringing the pedestrian.
So, Paul, I'm sorry. You were breaking down. I'm not sure if anybody else heard you.
I'm sorry. I'll repeat everything I said. I don't know who heard what. Thank you, Trustee Quesada. I just wanted to say that this plan does not eliminate any parking that exists now. And it brings the pedestrians out to a safer place in the road. And cars anymore. That was all I was saying on this slide.
So next we have a sample of the mast arms that we intend to use. So they are all decorative and they come in a variety of different styles that you can select. Try to match the feel of the area. The pole also comes in different styles depending on how ornate you want to make it. You can have it with many sides or relatively few.
And the one thing to touch on the signal poles is, and I discussed this with Paul earlier today, was just about the lead time on the signal poles. So typical lead time on signal poles is somewhere between 20 and 30 weeks, depending on the type of pole that we go with here. But the one thing that we've looked at with this intersection is the actual construction of the intersection can go ahead while the poles are on order and being manufactured. And the existing signal that's there can function in an interim basis until those final poles are installed and the signal is fully functioning with a new signal. So we think that
Thank you for bringing that up, Richard. I want to reiterate that so everyone's clear. We will have bid documents ready probably in a month and a half or so. We look to do a very short time on the street for bidding and do look to award it this summer and start work this summer. What Richard's saying is we can do all the subsurface work, all the concrete work, the paving work, the striping, etc., all off of the old signal, while the underground work and the footings and everything else that has to house these new stanchions, of which there are only 2, which is a good thing for an intersection with so many signals on it. We could put those up at that time and then basically switch over in one night once we get everything in place that's new, and then dismantle everything that's old. So we're not really looking for a whole lot of downtime in the intersection as far as signalized control of traffic. And it allows us to commence with the project, and we won't be held captive to some extent on what's happened with lead times on a lot of items.
Next up, we have the traffic controller system. So this is a company called GridSmart. They manufacture this camera across their unit and also software that helps to optimize the operation of an intersection. Basically, this camera replaces all of the traditional loops you might have seen in the road. So there's no more need for cutting the pavement and installing magnetic loops. It's all run off this one camera that's positioned above the intersection, and then it coordinates with the processor to identify what traffic is on each approach and select the appropriate timing.
And Paul mentioned this earlier, but this system gives the ability for your police department to remotely access this camera. They can look at the operation of the intersection. They can get data out of this to identify how the intersection is functioning. And if there's adjustments that need to be made to the timings of the intersection, those can actually be made either in the controller cabinet or remotely if we set it up that way by the police department.
I just want to ask, but these would not be what we call red light cameras. So in other words, they would not be used by the police for that purpose, correct?
No, they are not red light cameras. These are strictly for detection of vehicles as they approach the intersection. So so the signal knows how many vehicles are on each approach, where there's demand for time. They work basically the loops that you see in the road. They are identical to that. They're just replacing that with a camera now.
Perfect. Thank you.
And again, Rich, if you just want to maybe expand on this a little bit, if for any reason there is a power outage or internet service connection lost here, we're not going to lose the intersection. It will default back to emergency power supply and then run a pre-entered loop.
Right. So there's always going to be a backup signal timing in the controller, that if something were to happen, if the camera were to fail for some reason, or like you said, if there was a power supply issue, the signal would revert back to its basic operation for a pre-timed signal, basically. It wouldn't have actuation, but it would still function and control the traffic.
And it also has a detection measure, correct? Where a lot of times you see the intersections in the village where, the police will flip it to blinking yellow. So there's no, you're not waiting at a signal for no reason. This here can detect a car coming at 2 or 3 in the morning if there's no other traffic on the road, and it will pick up on that vehicle and give them the green when it senses it.
Correct. Yeah, these cameras are much more sensitive than the loops, and that's why there's an improvement here with them. And like you said, if it is 2 o'clock in the morning and somebody comes up to that approach, this camera with the controller can adjust to that one vehicle then that's there at that time, rather than that car sitting there for 30 seconds that may happen otherwise.
And lastly, we have the work zone plans. So these are just based on New York State standards for work at an intersection, just closing down an approach temporarily to perform some work on side of the street while flagmen allow the cars to continue to operate.
And obviously during all the work, there's going to be the need to shift traffic, or maybe close a lane like we're showing here with flagmen in the middle of the intersection. Those would be, temporary disruptions during the construction, but it's kind of a necessity of the work that's being done, and would generally, I think the village would work with the contractor to make sure that that's outside the peak hours of the traffic through the intersection, to make sure there's as little disruption as possible. And I think that's what we had. If you have any questions, we're happy to discuss further.
So those are basically the contract documents that will be afforded the bidders on this project. again, the written specifications that we have to complete and join with this will be issued through the clerk's office as all our capital projects. Again, the borrow was in place, and it's likely that within the month we'll be coming back to you for authorization to advertise for bids. So with that, we want to open it up to maybe some of what we discussed tonight outside of schedule. Some of the specifications that we showed you tonight, I think, give you the general idea of what we're looking to do. And do you have any questions?
I have one. Do you have a
Thanks.
rendering?
Oh, sorry.
Do
Thank.
you have
That's
a
all right.
rendering?
Listen, sorry,
of-
sorry for being late, but sorry, Dana. I was just gonna ask if anybody has questions, so it's fine. Go ahead, Dana.
Sorry, jumping in here. Do you have a rendering of the final product, some sort of computer rendering or?
We don't have a rendering. I'm not sure that that was part of what we were anticipating to do,
Okay,
part of this, but
Yeah, we didn't ask for one, Trustee White.
okay. Are we gonna get one?
I guess if it was the board's druthers for to do a rendering, we can create something. I know Rich, Pete did something along the lines of a rendering a couple of years back. It was more of like an offset plan view. that
yeah.
had some- But we'll talk about it.
Because with these stanchions and with the, it's just a different look, and I was just curious.
I'm sure we could put something together, and Paul, I believe you're right. I know back when you were looking at different alternatives for this intersection, there was something drawn up at one point. So we can certainly talk about that and what you want us to put together for that.
Okay. Karen, I'll get back to the board after I have a chance to meet with Rich offline. Hopefully by the end of this week with an idea of when you may be able to see a rendering.
Paul, are you asking the board to give opinions about different options and then you can go and do a rendering because you'll have at least a sense? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the chicken and the egg conversation here.
Well, I guess tonight, if we really wanted to update you on where we were, and I know I've kind of talked about certain things like these bollards and the powder coated finishes, but you never really saw them on paper until tonight. So I did want to do that. And now that we've done that, we just want to get a general sense that does the board like this product? And is there anything else you want to see outside of the rendering is noted? Is there anything else that you think should be incorporated into this project? One thing, I'm glad you said that, Mayor. One thing that we didn't really talk too much about because it's not really it's kind of like a collateral thing, but we are not just touching the intersection, but we're going to mill and overlay the entire intersection with blacktop to kind of be in concert with the other roads that we've been paving over the last few years. State Street's all blacktop. Spring Street will be new blacktop, hopefully in a couple of years if CDBG comes through. Broad Street is all blacktop, and Highland Avenue, etc. So we're looking to run the blacktop out of the intersection. Brandreth is brand new blacktop. Central Avenue's new blacktop. So we're looking to kind of tie into those newly paved roads and put the thermoplastic paint that we've been using on the new blacktop to really give the pedestrian safety a pop, which that thermoplastic paint really does. And it's also it's a nicer ride for your vehicle, I think, to ride on a newly paved road.
Dana, are you done with your questions or comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
Are you done, Rika? I guess I'll go. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah,
We
well,
can
I
hear you, Bob.
I can.
I have a
think
couple,
everybody can.
I have a couple questions. One of my big concerns is with us shrinking this down, and I know we've only had these candlesticks up is large truck traffic to intersection and down Main Street, up out of Central Avenue. I don't believe we have the industry down there now that warrants it, and I believe that can all be, even trucks once in a while from the sewage plant come up that way. Maybe redirect them to Snowden Avenue. That's just one thought. The cameras, are they adaptable? You say it recognizes a car when it comes to 2 blocks in the morning. What about fire department? Is there going to be anything that would be adaptable to that? Because I know we're talking with this road diet of making everything, remote from the fire trucks, that, the lights turn and, we have a nice clean path going in there, because it's just going to get, it's going to be great. I love the ballards. I love the whole concept of, so just so you know that I'm in favor of that. It's just a thought that I don't know if that can, does that tie into that, or is that adaptable? I don't know. Since we're going to do it, we should just do it, my opinion, and not have to go back into it later when we're tying in with a road diet.
Yeah,
Yeah, Rich, before you talk about the signal and its ability with emergency vehicles, when we laid out the original plans with the candlesticks for the temporary measures, that was going to be this project if it was fully developed at that time, Pete, who was in front of you back then, he was given the specification from you all in fire department of the ladder 82, larger ladder truck.
Right.
And he put that into his model for these turning radiuses, and it'll work with this intersection.
I'm not worried about turning radiuses. That's not my concern. My concern is when I talked about the larger trucks, and it's a quality of life issue to me, to be going through our Main Street area. There's other ways to make deliveries. That's just me personally saying, if we're going to do all of this and make Main Street look the way we want it to look, the last thing I want to see is a 52-foot tractor trailer sitting on Main Street. They're trying to make a turn at Central Avenue coming down or whatever. But that's little things, So I talked about the adaptability to recognize a fire truck or be able to control the signal somehow. The UPS backup system you have on it. What's the timeline on it? It's a 3-hour backup. Is it I'm presuming that's what you're putting in there, some sort of type of UPS backup in that system. And then I can't read my own writing. Oh no, that's right. That was it. 3 questions.
so I'll touch on the fire truck. So what you're talking about is preemption
Yep.
for the fire trucks, right? So that, I to be honest with you, off the top of my head, I'm not sure if we have that in the signal right now. We can talk about adding that, or it could be added at any point in the future. It's not a significant addition to the signal.
Okay.
So that's something that we can talk about. As far as backup, battery backup, I'm not sure exactly what we have designed in the signal. Unfortunately, I wasn't fully involved in the signal design, but we can talk about that with Paul, and we can get back to you on that one.
No, thank you. I just, it could be added. I get it. It's just me talking ahead of the curve.
Yep.
But just for my opinion, I like the layout. I like the ballards. I like the chain, to be honest with you. I think that just enhances what's downtown. But I'm in favor of what I'm seeing in front of me tonight, for the exception of what we pick for an actual ballard and what we pick for an actual light bulb. Thank you. Very nice.
Sure. I guess if I could go. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Philip.
Manny, before you start, I gotta hear it. You were involved from day one. It's like
So I was
long time
actually,
ago. So I gotta
you
hear
took
positive and negative before you even
you
start.
took that something that I was going to say, that not, I don't want to go in the roundabout portion of this, but no, it's definitely I agree with Bob. I like the details. it kind of blends in with what we have in our downtown. So Paul, I'm going to ask you something that I have asked in the past, obviously, sure. And I know the HPC has no control of what we do in here, but it's always good to have their feedback as well in regards to what the details look like, because they do oversee the historic portion of our downtown. Have you had conversations with them in regards to the details or the balusters or the light poles or the signal stuff and everything in there, or not yet?
No, I kind of wanted to get through this meeting first, and I did talk to Karen about this some time ago, that HPC was involved last time around as a reviewer to see if it was in concert with their same review that they do for the buildings. Because I believe they're applicable to facade only, or buildings only, not even for interior.
Correct.
But out of a courtesy, and it's one of our boards, we would ask that they give it a quick look-see before we go out to bid to see if there's any minor changes they might suggest.
I will appreciate that, obviously. And again, all the details, at least the balusters and the details that you guys are presented in here, I think they're appropriate. But I would like to hear, obviously, from the HPC as well. We do have to take in consideration what we have there now, something that will kind of blend in or match what the light poles are in there. So that is out of the question. So I have a couple more questions in here. So we talked about construction. What is, and I'm not going to hold you to a time frame, sure, but based on what you have, based on your experience and based on what we have done in the past, how long do you think this is going to take construction wise, from day one to date completion?
Well, that's a little bit of a.
I know.
The signal poles is the reason why I'm saying it's a little bit of a long range.
Yeah, I understand that. Forget about the lead time and
so
that one. I'm talking about
regardless of-
construction portion of it.
Regardless of the signal poles themselves, I would say that, the hard construction is probably 4 to 6 weeks in my mind when I look at it. They're, and it may not be like they're in the road every day for that 4 to 6 weeks, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. And then once you get the signal poles, most of the underground work for the signal would be done when by the time you have the signal poles. So putting the signal up is only probably a week or two, and then taking the old signal down. But the actual construction to get the curbing in and the sidewalk stuff done, which is the main part of what I think what you're asking, is probably, my guess, 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump in there, Richard, and say that that's going to also be a product of where it's very likely, we've talked about this as well offline, that the signal and electrical contractor that would likely be a prime here is going to subcontract out the concrete and the paving work. We're not going to do separate contracts. It's one contract. Depending on their subcontractor is really going to also dictate a lot of that timeline. I am, I'm fairly confident that the hardscape and the paving and the subsurface work, I'll agree with your 4 to 6, but I was going to say 4 to 6 months, because I figured it would take us through the entire summer into the fall. And then by then, maybe we'll get lucky before the end of the year where a stanchion would show up and we can erect it in any weather, because it's not really weather dependent. But, if we end up running off the old signal into next year when the pole gets here, that's what we do. But I think fairly certain that, we're only going to have one summer of upset at this intersection.
Yeah.
And Richard, I'm not discounting that someone couldn't bang it out in a month and a half, but there's logistical challenges in our downtown, like some things we want to stage and slow it down, where we don't want to do so many things concurrently. So yeah, being a little more conservative.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I understand where you're coming from that. And to final completion, absolutely. What you're talking about is 100%.
Okay. So pretty much, Paul, you just tripled the time frame on from day one to completion date. So I guess my caveat on that one, and I'll let you guys do this. What at least when you guys send out the bids portion of it, if you guys can add, and I'm not sure if that's what you do, I'm sure that's what typically we do on my end, is for the contractor to provide us with a schedule and the time frame. So at least we have an idea of how they will coordinate some of the challenges that we have. That being said, obviously, when this project starts, as we all know, that's the heart of our village on this intersection. So there's a lot of coordination needs to happen. So obviously, I would like to see or expect from the contractor to have plan B in a way to, when we start doing work in there, are we closing the roads? Are we deviating? All that stuff, all the logistics that I'm sure you guys be able to handle that. Now, regards to budget on this, because I'm seeing a lot of changes in the industry right now, from lead time to items that are not, taking place, it's just going up the sky on the value. What is your approximate budget on this one, regardless of what the boiler design or the light pole or the light signal design will be? Where are we at with a budget number, more or less?
I think what we said when I started, we were right around 750,000, and that was including the concrete and the paving work on top of the signal and instrumentation work. They just bid a similar type intersection. It wasn't 5-way, and Rich, you could expand a little bit, Phil or Rich, if you want to jump in. Less than 6 months ago, and just the signal work came in at around, I think it was 400,000. So, that falls right in line with what we're looking at. And again, coming out of the existing capital project where we have, about 900, and I forget what it was, Dale, 9 or 950 that's left in there. Yeah. We're within budget right now with our preliminary estimates.
Yeah, I would agree with what Paul just said. We have bid other projects. This signal itself is not a $300,000 signal, but it's got some things to it that are going to make it just a little challenging to install. So it'll be it'll probably be somewhere in the $200,000 range for the signal itself, plus and maybe a little more depending on how things work out, and then you have all the other work, obviously. But I think we're fairly comfortable right now. Obviously things are changing on a daily basis, but we're fairly comfortable right now that we're within that $750,000 budget, and factoring in for some inflationary costs that we know are out there. So
great. So I'm going to hold you to that number. So I have two more questions and I'll be done. Sorry. So regards to the signal and the camera portion of it, you mentioned that the police department will be able to access the portion of the camera and kind of control that. So what does that mean exactly? Do we need to, besides adding this hardware, do we need to have additional hardware that will have to go to the police department so they be able to access and they be able to control or maneuver? What does that look like?
it's all through the internet, and it's
Okay.
with the Grid Smart. It's an internet software that they provide when you purchase the camera, that you just log into the internet and you can do what you need to from there.
Okay, great. That answers my question. I appreciate that. So now you also, and forgive me if Paul, you explained this before, and I know Bob touched this a little bit. I remember the last time that we were talking about this intersection, we were talking about coordinations between the lights on Church and Highland Avenue, and also that, so they can communicate with each other. Now that we're doing another portion of that, we most likely going to be redoing some of that stuff in there. Regards, are those two lights going to be able to communicate with each other?
No, we're not going to. Those intersections are not going to communicate. What the state was concerned with was really the traffic flow and the level of service from that intersection going up Church Street and getting introduced into the state's right of way and corridor. But those lights, that light at Church and the light at Croton are the ones that the state's going to work on the communication with one another. But the traffic flow, everybody froze on my screen. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah, we can.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, those won't be communicating with one another, but the level of service will be what the state's going to be interested in, and accounts that come out of that intersection.
Okay, so you answered his question literally, but I think what he's really saying is they should coordinate with, why aren't they?
Well, I mean-
he asked, will they? You said no. Okay, you answered, but that's not what he was really getting to. He's getting to, why aren't they coordinated?
Well, the state will adapt their signal when they redo the, when we present to them. That's what Creighton Manning is working on, the counts from that intersection to present to the state the signal design on the Church Street intersection. So that is this intersection's traffic impact is being incorporated into the road diet plan.
So let me ask you another question based on that. Sure. So can we, because we are proposing the state on that intersection, sure, to redo all these things. Is there a way that we can say, can we put the same system that we are putting in here on a downtown with this camera system, that you guys can incorporate that on new intersections with all pretty much 1, 2, 3 lights that we have at that portion? Sure. It's something that we can do at that area. Again, if we can do it, that'll be great, because then we have a little bit more control over flow, sure, because we have that problem on that loop. There's a big problem there. No counting all the lights, obviously. So if we can do that, that'd be awesome, because then they can communicate with each other better than what we have right now.
It's a good point. It's something that we could bring up to the state when we sit with them next time, when we go to our next traffic road diet program meeting. But the state has never really alluded to, outside of it allowing us to pay for the improvements to their signals, hasn't really indicated that they were willing to let us take over the operation of their signal.
I don't know if I want to say take over, obviously. I mean, they can always take over. I just want to make sure that the communication with those light signals are there, that they work properly. That's all. But besides that, again, that's something that you guys can coordinate and kind of get back to us. That's a totally different animal within itself, sure. We're not talking about that right now. Overall, I think this is a great project. I would love to see, something that, we have talked about before in the past, or at least I have, is pedestrian safety and how do we manage that? Something that, we have that in there, and I think the bump outs will help, which I think is great. Let me ask you this. Is there something additional that we can add to our roads to have? Because cars they like to, as soon as they see the yellow light, they like to kind of go a little bit faster so they don't get stuck there. Is there something that we can add to our roads for a pedestrian safety portion in here that you guys can recommend?
I gotta tell you, one of the things that slows down cars a lot, and it's probably, and Rich, again, Phil, jump in if I'm going in the wrong direction here, is really the hardscape itself. It's not so much a lot of like the things that people think slow traffic down, but when you paint and you compress a lane width, or you have a bump out that makes drivers focus on staying in the 11-foot lane versus the 15 feet that they presently have to go through that intersection and drive around another car, by default, that's just going to slow people down because of the visual that they have. They're entering into a very tight intersection with defined boulevards and bollard defined bump outs for pedestrians, and lighting and signals and marks on the road for pedestrians to cross. And when you have all those items in the road that facilitate the pedestrian, the driver by default has to slow down, because they're going in, they mentally see the narrow area, and the car wants to slow down. It's very similar to fog lines having a dual purpose on a road like we did on Underhill. Fog lines define the edge of a road, but if you compress the fog lines to your double yellow and you make the lane as narrow as can be, depending on the speed of the road, people stay within that lane and they tend to slow down if they have to stay in a narrower lane. It's just it's how it typically works. So
That's the
things like
concept,
that.
at least, sure.
Well, things help a lot. Things help a lot that
Yes.
are that we're
We can
putting in.
always, I guess we can always look into that and see if that's the case, and we can do probably something afterwards if we don't see that had help. Again, but thank you. No, I think it's a great design, great concept. If you guys can just follow up with the HPC poll, that'd be very helpful. I would love to hear the feedback in regards to the details that they may select. Besides that, I think I would like to move forward with this project. So yes, thank you.
So just a couple things, just stepping off of Manny with the signals. I agree, it'd be nice to see them be compatible with each other. I just would hate to see us throw a monkey wrench, if any, into the state plans right now. If it would, I don't know. But I would maybe, is it possible to know if and what the state's gonna put up there on the top of Church Street? Is it compatible with what we're using? That's probably one thing, that's all. But I get it. You mentioned the lead times on the polls are lengthy. I get that. What's the lead time on those ballots? Approximately. I'm not gonna hold you to it.
I don't know off the top of my head. Unfortunately, I have to do some research on them. I think those are more readily available than the polls.
My point to that is, it's okay, I get it, the hardscape, the painting and paving's all gonna be done. We're just gonna be waiting for poles to come and on a night shift, change them poles out, is my understanding of the work.
Yeah, more or less, that's the idea, yeah.
Okay, all right, that's all I got, thank you.
Anybody else?
I will go.
Thank you.
Good evening. A lot of my colleagues brought up points that I would have, so I have three. One is that I want to underscore what Dana said in the beginning about the rendering. I think it would be helpful for the layperson to be able to envision what we're doing as a final result. And because usually with project has to do with construction of a building or some other thing like that, there's a rendition of what that's going to look like outside of the space. But with something like this, it doesn't really fit. But if we have something at least that we can point to, even if we can put up a QR code somewhere and have people look at it as this thing is going on, I think that would preempt a lot of questions. That's one. Two is I didn't hear any discussion about bicycles and how bicycles might interact with these visions. Can you please talk to me about how you envision how bicycles might interplay here?
Well, one of the things, and I don't want to digress into it, but you did open the door. One of the things I was discussing with assistant manager was the, help me out, Maddi, what's the name of the program that we had the conference call the other day?
Project Mover.
Project Mover, yeah. The
Very-
Project
very
Mover folks.
sophisticated name.
Yeah, that's why I forgot it probably. The Project Mover folks and Maddi and I were having a conversation about having continuity of our newly paved roads into the main districts, the main, what we'd envision be the main bike routes that would have the most traffic on it without impacting parking. And we really, at the end of the conversation, it really boiled down to, you can't do that in a lot of the downtown without impacting parking, but the best thing you can do is make it the most appropriate for bicycles. So obviously you're the best condition road you can have. So all these newly paved roads that we have around this area are conducive to having shared lanes and signage and indications that bikes are also on this road, with certain demarcations on the road and having public outreach to make people aware. But outside of that, creating bike lanes would be a whole nother conversation if we wanted to create something similar to what you see in Manhattan. where they have designated bike lanes, but they, I'm very familiar with those systems that they have down there. And they've removed traffic lanes because they have wide enough roads to do it, or they remove parking. And, it's tough. It would be tough to do here because we really don't have what they had as initial infrastructure before they transferred over.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What I would say is that whatever we can do that makes sense, like the markings, the signage, those kinds of things, I'm in favor of. Anytime that we're repaving, or in this case, doing even much more extensive work, I just want to keep bicycles in mind, because even if it's things like at the red light, having I've seen this more in like Scandinavian countries, but they have like there's a little bump out where you can put your foot and as you're waiting, right? So you don't have to like lean over too much, because you might like get too much into where the cars are. There's like a lot of little things. I'm no expert when it comes to it, but just don't forget the bikes is the message there. And then number 3 is this is a question more for staff and the board, but I was thinking about how all of these changes during the construction itself is going to impact the local businesses, the farmers market, and the events that happen there, like the village fair, for example. So I'm curious about how we are thinking about those pieces. And it could be like on the weekends, we pause construction so that, because we know there's more people traveling then, or like during the larger events like the village fair, like we're saying, like we won't have the village fair there. We're going to do it over on some other street for this year because we're, those kinds of things. So businesses, farmers market, events, would love to hear thoughts with respect to that.
So by default, we're missing the Portuguese and the village fair this year, right? With construction.
Correct.
And I really hope if everything goes as expected, we'll be missing next year's because we'll be completed, or essentially complete, I should say. And as far as the farmers market and other, standalone items like that, if you looked at the extent of the curb work and the concrete work, which is really the most disruptive, that really doesn't really reach far outside of the intersection itself. But you're right, there is going to be mobilization areas and equipment storage and material storage that the contractor is going to need. And when we've done extensive work in anywhere that, more often than not, we'll put them somewhere in a satellite location. We'll take an area of a parking lot that's close but maybe underutilized, or somewhere in one of our yards. But we're very sensitive to not restricting pedestrian and vehicle to downtown area or any of the storefronts, for sure. That's always paramount in any project down there.
Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you, friends. It was great.
Okay, thank you. So some of my questions were asked and answered. The last was the bike, the mover project, because there are 3 parallel paths. Well, there's 3 parallel paths of projects: the Route 9, Diet, the mover, which hopefully Maddi will get for us. Personally, we'll make sure the check is delivered in whole. And this project, which I really expect to get started this year, because I think it's long overdue. And then we have all the DRI stuff. There's also happening on our parallel paths. We don't know when they'll start or not. But to Omar Lopez's point, we look at concrete and we look at graphs and charts and what goes underground. We also have to look above ground. So bikes, humans crossing, businesses being affected, even if it's not at the intersection. If there's a backup of traffic every single Saturday, they're not going to come to the downtown because it just takes too long to get from point A from point B. So I think a lot of the human logistics has to be worked into it. I would say that with the bike issues, Maddi, I would just say, I don't know where it's written that the bike lanes have to be in the center of the downtown. Some of the other side streets might be the more appropriate streets to be able to move that, to do that with entrance into the five-way intersection at some point and, you know, to go around the main street. I don't want to drive every detail. The only thing I didn't hear, and I may have missed it, I do apologize for being late. I had some problems getting out of, anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry I'm late, but if I missed it, just say you missed it and I could look at it, the recording. But the landscaping issue, where is nature coming into this, the environmental issues? Drainage, landscaping, greenery, trees, where is all that in here on the bump outs? I thought there was going to be some sitting areas with some greenery, not to mention beautification, which just from a humanistic point of view, is one of the pleasures of living in this part of the country, is that you have a spring and you have a summer and you have a fall. Where is that in the plan, Paul? And where is that in the budget?
We didn't really, the bump outs themselves are really just to put a permanent specification that goes along with the, everybody froze again. Can you hear me?
Everybody can hear you. You're
I'm
good.
sorry.
You're good.
Okay. So the bump outs that we created were to put a permanent concrete structure where the candlesticks are now.
Mhm.
And we didn't really, because that's obviously impermeable there and we're putting the impermeable back, there was no enhanced drainage that we needed. We have the drainage infrastructure that's in place right now. Will facilitate the stormwater condition when we're done. As far as additional bump outs, you know, tangential to this project, that we kind of, I thought we were kind of leaving that more to the road diet, where we're coming down into Main Street with some of the island bump outs on Upper Main and such, to create those type of areas, because this project was really intersection centric outside of the extended road work and the signal work.
Okay, so said another way, if somebody can look at the beautification part, there's an opportunity here to think a little differently. I also want the garbage included in this. Where I hate the idea that we build and then we plant garbage cans and then we buy, you know, planters that get put on and all of that. It's just an opportunity to think a little bit ahead and say, okay, it's a little bit of what Trustee Lopez was saying, you know. Not that I know which Scandinavian country, but they're famous for having these small things that are sort of really cool and life-changing, as he described. But they also do that with how they look at garbage cans and where they're placed. It's not put in after everything is done. It's put into a plan right up front so that it fits with the whole overall look. And plantings and all that, if you could give it a thought, if there's no room for it, you could just come back and say, yeah, there's no room for it, but just to give
Okay.
it some thought, you know, would be appreciated. It's no different than people who put in all the ADA stuff and said, gee, it's not only for people who are handicapped, but it's also for people with strollers. And how do we make sure that they fit double strollers? And how do we make sure that it's a smoother ride, but still be applicable? I mean, you know, it's like, if you're going to do it, then put the human factor into it. So I'm only requesting that if it's possible to give that some thought as well. And I don't think it'll kill our budget if you added a few items like that.
Yeah.
Just food for
Noted.
thought. The rest of the stuff, I'm for it. I think you're going to have to be very cognizant of the budget. There are a lot of pieces here. I love that you, as always, Paul, are thinking about the historic look of the village. You know, there are enough cities in Westchester. We don't all have to look like cities. We could actually keep the integrity of a historical overlook, like flow, that makes it look like a village, even though we're modernizing and updating and all of that. There's no reason modern and historical can't work hand in glove. So very much appreciate that. I love the sort of that powdered black, because I know that as soon as we put things down, they start getting damaged. There's so much wear and tear. Seems to me like that's probably something that's easily fixable. At least it seems like that, but I'm not an engineer, that things can be, you know, that's important, because some of the concrete work that we've done, like pressed concrete, within 5 years starts peeling away and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't but I don't feel, I'm sure others might, but I've no need to decide between Ballard like A, B, or C, as long as it has a historical element to it that you think works well with what we've already done, so that we're leveraging that look. To me, it all seems totally great as long as we can get moving on it. It is actually, Paul, the one thing I liked about the roundabout was the landscaping opportunities that it afforded, you know, in the center to just liven that place up. But you'll see what you can do. That'll
Okay,
be great. Anybody else? Questions, comments? I got the budget questions, so thanks for asking that. And
can I just recap? I want to make sure I have the main points before we
Please.
come back the next time. So,
please,
in no particular order, we're going to try to put some type of rendering together. I'll float it back and forth to the manager's office to see if it's really sufficient for what you deem is the need outside of this meeting. Additional landscaping, I think Rich and Phil, we could probably maybe work something into the bump outs themselves, maybe something low lying so we won't have any visual impact on pedestrian or traffic sight distance issues. But something, because the area is large enough, we could pull out some of that stamp detail and maybe put something, put some soil in there and put some low lying shrubs, or maybe we'll make it a place for annuals. Regarding the budget, again,
no
all things being
annuals.
equal, I think we're safe with that. And I will, obviously, the only time I'm really gonna be able to update you all on the budget is after we bid it. But we're confident that we're in a good place right now. And the bicycle component, that's something that you know, maybe we can you know, I'll maybe have a sit down with Drew, Maddi, and show her the concept plan here and see what she thinks. If there's something that we might be able to even include as part of this bid specification, some signage or something like that that we could put on the in the area that, you know, can be installed under this contract. The only other potential area for development where it would have a green impact is something that I think we're going to be talking about at a future meeting, which is the area where the holiday tree is now, but that's really part of the post office lot and maybe a future project. So outside of what I talked about, and Rich, I don't even know if Pete talked about this with you yet, but we were going to put some type of a more of a permanent electrical service to that area over there in the southwest corner of the intersection, because right now we're just pulling in off a pigtail off a pole. But I'll go over that with you later, not for this meeting. And I think that was it.
Okay, I'm gonna add one more. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for trustee White, but I think the reason she's asking for a rendering, or at least that's why I would have asked, is so that those of us that don't read one-dimensional prints with hundreds and hundreds of lines on them and don't have a sense, or even a two-dimensional, that these three-dimensional renderings, two-dimensional renderings are really for communication purposes. They allow us to just see. And here's what I'm also asking. I want a sign put up, Karen knows this, in the 5-way intersection that tells the community who's doing, what they're doing, when it starts, when it's planned to be finished or expected, or at the very least, the number of months. This is 6 months, with a beautiful rendering in it, with phone numbers to call or website to look at for updated information. You know, it's really important for the community to know this is what's coming. When I tell people we're gonna, you know, get to do the 5 people get very excited about it, okay? I would say the same thing for the state, for almost anything we do. Nice, big, visually sound, colorful rendering with some information would be appreciated. Would be really great if it was also in Spanish, or at least there is a way to click on a website that then translates into Spanish for someone, you know. That would be really helpful to the whole project. It will also alleviate you're 3 months into it, and people say, nobody told me this was happening. I didn't know. Why didn't anybody ask me, et cetera, et cetera. I think we do ourselves a great injustice by not putting signs up where we do construction work to inform the public of lots of work that is being done here on behalf of the public.
Okay, well, I'll get some I mean, we're gonna have to get the design done first, but and some other details to go on the sign, but when we have them, we will make a project sign similar to what we had in front of 200 Main Street that the state requires as part of that grant. And if you all know what I'm referring to there.
Yep.
And we'll do something down there, and hopefully it will be inclusive of a rendering on it as well, with some type of notes there for the Spanish-speaking public to be a place to go for information on the project as well. And one thing I left off was also the HPC review, which I'll discuss with the manager's
Oh,
office too.
That's right, yeah. Great. I think you got it.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information, but it's great. It's very exciting. So thank you, and thank you, the folks from Collier too. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Very much appreciate all the information, the details, and very excited. I know we may not look like it. Some of us look a little more tired, but honestly, I think everybody on the board and staff, Paul's been talking about this for many years now, so
Well,
it's very
I
exciting to get moving.
can say for myself, I'll be excited to see this get done as well, because I was here when we were looking at the roundabout and things like that at this intersection. So it'd be nice to see something get done here.
That's great. Well, thank you. I'm glad. I like the continuity. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?
Sounds good.
All
Have a good
right.
evening. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. I'm sure you're gonna be leaving, but I feel I always have to invite.
So,
Thank you.
okay, so next up, we are going to bring over Lieu Wiegman from Sustainable Westchester and his colleagues from Sustainable Westchester. And they're going to talk to us about their solar credit offering program.
I don't see them. Oh, there he is.
They're coming. It's slow moving today.
All over the county. Something is going on, actually.
It just took a few seconds to click in. Well, I'm
Good
excited
evening,
for
sir.
the village's planned upgrades for the pedestrian safety at Five Corners. We visit Austining quite a bit, and that's a very beautiful historic main street that you have. So I'm delighted for the potential improvements there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're going to create bollard envy in Croton, you know that, when you have those nice bollards. Everyone in Croton's going to want bollards too at our five-way intersection in the upper village. All right, anyway, we're here because Sustainable Westchester is a nonprofit organization of which the village of Austining is a founding member. I do have a couple of slides. If I would be allowed to share my screen, I can, and these are the same slides we've provided.
Before we do that, is Ms. Santos and Ms. is that
Carmen
Nahar?
Santos and Yasmin Yashar, my two colleagues. Carmen Santos is one of our solar program managers, and she's managing the program that we're developing that we'll describe tonight, which is our community solar credit program. And Yasmin Najar is our climate justice fellow, and she's been working with us particularly on extending our outreach of our programs to the disadvantaged communities and low to moderate income households throughout the county.
Great, welcome. Now
you.
we've got it all. Thank you.
Let's see, share screen. I guess I have the ability to do that. Perfect. I'll go here and make it bigger. So as you all know, this is an information session for the public about the Westchester Power Solar Credit offering. And this is today's date, and Carmen and I and Yasmin are with you for this. As you may know, Sustainable Westchester is a nonprofit that is comprised of 45 cities, towns, and villages in Westchester County, including the county itself. And our goal is really to bring sustainable, environmental, and fiscally sound solutions to each of our communities. And many times we develop programs that many of our different municipalities collaborate in and join. And our basic focus is on achieving a sort of a clean energy environment. And of course, we have a number of different program areas that we're busy with. Community energy is the one that we'll be focusing on most today. We also have clean heating and cooling, programs for both residential and commercial buildings in our building energy programs. We have electrification solutions on electrifying transportation and electrifying landscaping and lawn care to take those activities away from fossil fuels. And we also have a popular zero waste recycle right application that helps individual households figure out when particular recycling and waste management events are taking place in their community. I'll move forward. A lot of what we're working on is actually in direct concert with the state climate goals. As you may know, New York State leads the nation with the most aggressive climate change protection act and Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act in the country. The goal is 70% renewable energy by 2030, which is now only 8 years away. We're currently at 30%, so we've got 40% to go in the next 8 years. And lastly, we're going to be talking today about our Westchester Power Community Energy Program itself. Specifically, Westchester Power is what we call, what New York State generically calls the Community Choice Energy Aggregation Program. And in Westchester County, Sustainable Westchester was authorized to run the first such supply program in New York State, starting in 2016, and the Village of Austin was a flagship member of that. And we're modeled on a statewide program that's regulated by the Public Service Commission. And the program is based on offering a community-wide benefit to residents, in this case, utility customers who were eligible to participate. And in this case, the first offering was for a fixed rate electric supply offering over the course of a long period of time. And any individual residents that are in the program at the start may opt out at any time without any penalty. The second offering that's coming down the pike shortly is later this year is our solar credit program, which you can think of as an enhanced community solar program. And I'll get to that in a moment. Our focus today will be on explaining a few things about this Westchester Power solar credit or enhanced community solar offering. Namely, what is a solar credit offering? Is it compatible with the electricity supply offering? How does it work? What are the benefits of the solar credit offering? And why have we particularly prioritized the enrollment of the Utilities Energy Assistance Program households as a priority for this benefit? And what the next steps would be for the Village of Austin should it be interested in being able to offer this, extend this benefit to its assistance program participant households in the village. Specifically, the Westchester supply offering offers a renewable energy as well as a standard supply at a fixed rate for a long period of time, multiple 2-year terms typically. And buying in bulk means a fixed rate that's lower than would be otherwise potentially available. We currently have about 85% of our households participating in the clean energy option, which steeply reduces carbon emissions and reduces the reliance on natural gas peaker plants. And we have currently, with the latest municipality to join, which was the city of Yonkers in February, we currently have 145,000 households throughout Westchester County, as well as small businesses within 29 municipalities participating. And we have additionally 2 other municipalities that are in the process of joining our program. Yorktown and the town of Portland are deliberating that process right now. This energy supply offering, however, is not something we can extend to the most needy households in our communities, because we can't always guarantee that our fixed rate is always going to be below what the utility rate is. So those households participate in a federally subsidized energy assistance program with the utility, but have not been eligible for this energy supply offering. Our solar credit offering is, let me just, Carmen, let me know if, did I get to your slides yet?
I can pick this up at this
Okay,
point.
I always forget because anyway, so Carmen will take over, but yeah, so let me, I think,
Hi,
thank you.
everyone. Thank you very much.
Carmen
for having
Santos.
us. Thank you. So to continue on the presentation, we're here to discuss the solar credit offering, which is basically a community solar offering that delivers monetary savings to the participants. However, this offering is on an opt-out basis. So it operates like the electricity supply program, where someone is automatically enrolled in the program unless they choose to opt out. So the offering supports local solar and energy storage projects. We're aiming to prioritize low to moderate income households. Specifically, this offering is available to assistance program participants or those who are in the utilities low income assistance programs. And we have decided to prioritize these households as the first cohorts for the solar credit offering. Okay. Oh, Leo, thanks. Thank you. And so this offering is compatible with the electricity supply offering, with the exception that it is not available to assistance program participants because we cannot guarantee savings with the, I'm sorry, the offering is eligible to assistance program participants, but the assistance program participants cannot participate in the electricity supply offering because that offering does not guarantee savings for them. Sorry about that. Next, please. Okay, so we have submitted our implementation plan to be able to offer this to our municipalities. And we expect for the Public Service Commission to approve our implementation plan this summer. We hope to start enrolling customers in the fall of 2022, where the first cohorts that are eligible for the offering would be receiving bill credits as early as 2023. And sorry.
No. Do you need to go back or?
Sure. Basically, we will be making available this opportunity to all Westchester County municipalities. Next, please. So how does the offering work? Much like the electricity supply offering, we will be doing a lot of outreach. However, our outreach will be very targeted and phased outreach, and it will be starting on the Q4 of 2022. Once we do outreach for a certain cohort based on the available capacity, solar capacity that we have, we will be sending these cohorts notification letters. And the residents that are part of this cohort will have 30 days to opt out before they're automatically enrolled. Participants that do not opt out will be matched to a specific solar farm through which they will be receiving guaranteed solar credit savings on their bill each month. And this would be about 10% of their electricity bill. And next, please. So the benefits of this offering include that it will potentially provide an average assistance program household about $9 a month for about 20 years or more. We've identified in Westchester County, based on public census data, that there are about 30,000 assistance program participants in Westchester County, which translates into $62 million in savings over 20 years. So it will be a really impactful program or offering, sorry. And sorry about the background noise there. So the customers will pay their bills the way they're currently paying. All they're going to see is really a line item that says, these are the solar credit savings you're receiving. And this again will promote local solar development. The beneficiaries will remain in their utility assistance programs, so they won't be impacted. They will keep their preferred electricity supplier. So for right now, for most of them, it should be Con Ed for the village. And they now just have the ability to choose and participate in this offering or opt out at any time without penalty or fees. Okay. So how it benefits our communities, the offering promotes climate justice. It strengthens our local economies with retained savings. It stimulates and accelerates local renewable energy development at scale. It lowers air pollution, and it helps us meet our climate goals. Next, please. Like always, we're going to be here to support you. We're going to do a lot of outreach. We're going to have a lot of collateral materials. Again, that notification letter will be delivered to every eligible resident. We're going to have our customer service as usual, and we're going to have support in Spanish language. So why are we prioritizing assistance program participants? That is because they face the highest burden of energy costs and therefore have the highest needs. Once we enroll all assistance program participants, we will enroll households in designated disadvantaged communities that are not enrolled in the utilities low income assistance programs. After that, we aim to enroll businesses and organizations that serve disadvantaged communities. And after that, we will go and offer these solar credit savings to those who are in the Westchester Power electricity supply. Next, please. As we mentioned, we've identified about 30,000 assistance program participants throughout the county using US Census data. We used an indicator for a number of households that have food stamp and are in the SNAP program. And so if you go to the next slide, you're able to see that the village of Ossining has approximately 576 households that would benefit from this. Next, please. Okay, so as you can tell, 30,000 is a large number. So what we need to do is also have a prioritization method for those assistance program participants. What we are going to aim to do is that all municipalities participating in the solar credit offering, we will first make this available to the APP households across these municipalities. And after that, we will move to the next customer group, which would be the disadvantaged communities and the households that are located within it. So now we're going to move in phases as we explained, and we're going to go in phases that are by census tracts. So we are going to prioritize census tracts that are first designated as disadvantaged communities with the highest statewide combined percentile rank that was developed by the Climate Justice Working Group. This ranking takes into account environmental burdens and population vulnerabilities. When there's an absence of a combined rank, we will use the burden rank. After that, we will go to non-designated disadvantaged communities, and we will prioritize them based on the lowest area medium household income. One thing to note is that we know some of the municipalities will be early adopters while others will take longer. So we will start with the early adopters and eventually build those municipalities that adopt the enabling law later on. Next, please. This is just an example of how the prioritization will work. So you can see that the first cohort, if the city of Peekskill is one of the early adopters, will be in the city of Peekskill, and we will have about 473 APP households within that first census tract. And we would go down the line. So the next one is the city of Yonkers, and then the city of Peekskill, and so on. And you can already see that actually we're going to find that the 10th census tract is the village of Ossining. So there are a lot of households that would benefit right away if you set up the enabling law on sooner. Next, please. Okay, so what are the next steps for municipalities? Basically, it would be amending your enabling law, so adopting an updated version that we shared with you. And after that, we will be sharing with you an administration agreement, which we aim to circulate after we are approved by the Public Service Commission. And additionally, once you adopt the enabling law, we are actually able to start outreach. So in order for the municipality to be approved to participate in the offering by New York State, we're going to need a copy of the updated enabling law, evidence that we have done at least 2 months of outreach and education post adoption of the enabling law, and we will also provide the sample notification letter we've prepared. Next, please. Okay. So as for the enabling law, the updates we did are to incorporate this new offering. And we worked with the Department of Public Services and our legal counsel at Pace Energy and Climate Center to do the updates that were needed. And we provided you a sample annotated law that was basically using the City of New Rochelle's 2015 adopted enabling law. Next, please. And this is just a sample of the annotations we left for you. You can see that we've added definitions. We also included the product offering, which is in the state referred to as community distributed generation credits. And we also referred a lot to the CCA framework order so that your enabling law stays up to date longer. So with that, we made a few, we removed a few sections and just referred to the order wherever we thought was most appropriate. Next, please. Okay. Also, we want to say thank you so much, Mayor Leving, for signing the letter to support that low-income households benefit from offerings such as this. We submitted that and we had about 12 letters submitted. One just came in today from the City of Yonkers, so we're very happy that we were able to submit those letters. We also are here to ask for your support in involving us with solar and energy storage projects that could potentially be built into this offering. And with that, we go to the next slide and say thank you very much for your time, and please let us know if you have any questions.
Okay,
We
thank
know
you.
that we know that was a lot of information. We have this slide deck, which I think we shared with Maddi before, but we're happy to circulate it to anyone who would like it. And we have the drafts red line of you did adopt, of course, enabling legislation in 2015, as did 29 other municipalities. But because of these updates and changes in the state regulations, we've been able to work on a sort of future-proofed version of that law. That's why it's redlined and submitted to you. And I'd be happy to circulate today's version of the red line, which is slightly different from what we sent 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure you can send it to the village manager, the board if you want, and
Sure.
Mostly Stuart Kahan.
Got it. Thank you. Happy
Great,
to do that.
well, thank you for that presentation. If we could put unshare and then we could.
I will unshare. Thank you.
I did want to mention, thanks to Stuart, last week, the board actually called for a public hearing on the legislation. So they are expected to hold that public hearing a week from tonight. So hopefully will we be the first one?
Well, yes. Well, let me.
No.
No, bummer.
No, well, hang on. Technically, yes. Yorktown was in the process of joining our electricity supply program, and they asked for what the local laws should be. So we gave them an earlier draft of this 3 months ago, which they adopted, but you would be the first one to adopt the full amended version. How
The
about that?
correct one.
Just
We
the
win.
correct, the latest correct one.
We win.
They did it just, they did it good enough so that we don't have to make any amendments. The story behind this is that the state came up with this term, community distributed, generation credits or benefits, as a catch-all phrase. Today, that means a solar farm that can be shared among the lowest income households for credits. Tomorrow, it may mean an energy storage facility that's developed somewhere, or some combination of those things. So you would be the first municipality adopting the freshly minted latest language. How's that sound?
Yay.
That would be fine. If you could just circulate the most recent version.
Yeah, it's got a few tiny changes,
Right.
but I think you'll be,
So,
yeah,
so
thank
we
you.
can have, so we can have it before next week's public hearing. That would be
You'll have it on your desk tomorrow, Mr. Khan.
I just can't wait.
I know it.
you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So we appreciate the presentation. You know, Carmen, I actually think I was around when you were introduced as a member. How long have you worked at Sustainable Westchester?
Right now, I think about 2 years.
Yeah, I actually remember when you came to a meeting. Well, when you showed up for a meeting. Anyway, just so the public knows, Austining has been a member of Sustainable Westchester for a long time, for many years. We were one of the first municipalities to sort of sign up for all
Yeah,
the
you were an initial member of the Northern Westchester Energy Action Consortium, which
Right.
predated. So your involvement as a community goes back, dare I say, 12 years?
Right, there was a northern coalition, there was a southern
Yes, correct.
coalition, and it
Yeah.
was combined to form one larger and I think more efficient. And when you saw those 6 sort of boxes of all the different pieces, I don't remember about the vehicles, but I think we are involved in every aspect of it.
I think you are.
Before me as well, the mayor, also, you know, big advocates of all of this decarbonization concepts, and the more the merrier. I do like the community aspect that came about a couple years ago, so that we're able to do bigger projects and not house by house.
Correct.
And I do like the fact that you've expanded into the less privileged of the community, in the sense of the affordability of it, you know, and the understanding of it, and your education arm, because all your presentations, I'm not sure about this one in particular, but when you're inside the community, there's a significant effort for education. And I see that Sue Donnelly's on the call. I think that she and my household did solar paneling at around the same time for our houses, from a project that was part of, under a different name, but Sustainable Westchester, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah, that was our
So,
Solarize program.
The Solarize Austining Barcliff or Barcliff Austining, whatever it was. So I'm a big proponent. I shouldn't speak for everybody. There are other countries that are so far ahead of us in solarizing communities. I just think, even though we're in the Northeast and people think, oh, it should all be in the whole southern part of the country where there's a lot of sun. It's not just about sun. There's sun every day. You just got to use it. But all of the projects, I appreciate you being here. Are there any questions? And I appreciate all the work. And we should say that Austings also has, at least the town has, a member of the board of Sustainable Westchester, which is I consider a cooperative of the municipality. So we are represented at Sustainable Westchester. We're members of them. And our residents are therefore represented. And that's why we see you as often as we do. So I think the public should know where its representation is taking effect. Anyway, having said that, is there anyone in the gallery that would like to ask questions, comment? I think we're told what the next steps are. So questions, comments, board? I'm not seeing anyone, but that just means you guys did a great job.
Okay, very well. So we'll circulate the latest little tweaked version of the enabling law as a red line. And
Thank you.
happy to answer any questions that any one of you may have over email or phone.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You as well.
Have a
Good night.
evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Village Manager, I think we're back to you, yeah?
Yep. As you all know, parking is a big topic of conversation over the last several months. And our team here, Maddi, Zachacz, and Sue Donnelly, Stuart, Kahan, Chief Sylvester, have been, among others, have been busy at work looking at different ways to make parking more efficient and more effective, easier for businesses, residents, and visitors alike. So tonight we're going to be talking about the in lieu of fee, which would allow developers to pay into a parking improvement fund when they are building in areas where they are challenged to meet their parking obligations, as well as changes to municipal parking and how we are adopting some of the recommendations in the Nelson-Nygaard study to make sure that we have efficient use of parking in the downtown area, more turnover, more flexibility to make sure businesses can get customers, and some things to address employees as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Village Manager Maddi Zachacz.
Hey, thank you, Karen. Good evening, board. So as was mentioned, we have been hard at work in large part implementing a lot of recommendations from the Nelson-Nygaard Mobility and Parking Study, which was completed last summer. The first step and really the foundational step was the introduction of the Passport mobile app, which we are about a month and a half in, and so far it's doing great. We're seeing more and more usage on the weekdays. When I last reported to you, it was very high on Saturdays, but the weekdays have been creeping up. So we know that the technology is good and that it's being well utilized. And so now we are ready to sort of move on to the complementary components and sort of build from there. Stuart has been doing a yeoman's job in trying to memorialize my ramblings to come up with some local laws that reflect what we are going to recommend. Stuart, do you have a preference of which area we start with here?
Why don't we start with the parking, because we've got the chief and Sue here, and then we can go into the in lieu after that. So why don't we start with some of the proposed changes we're going to be making to Chapter 250. And let me just preface this, folks. Changing Chapter 250 is like herding cats. You basically touch one thing and then 5 other things have to get changed. So my hope is at the next work session to actually have the draft of those changes, because they're going to be fairly large. But we have all discussed some of the areas where those changes will be. And I think that's really what we wanted Maddi to perhaps at least present tonight, so we can go over that with the board. So I'll leave it for you at that point.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Stuart. So these are both, or all 3 of them are actually recommendations that the board has heard before. They're a little bit more developed than when we presented them to you last. But they are also concepts that Karen and I presented to a group of downtown businesses a couple weeks ago. We did flyers all up and down Main Street and Spring Street to make sure folks were aware of the meeting.
How many
there
businesses?
were some, pardon me?
How many businesses were at the meeting?
Only 4.
Okay.
Actually came, but we had probably I would say 5 or 6 who responded to my email and said, unfortunately, we're not able to attend. We sent them the slide deck and posted it on the village website. And so we sent everybody a link so they could view it and reach out with any questions. The first component is probably the most simple. We have been asked by a group of people, and I'm sure the clerk's office can agree. We are seeing more folks who are traveling more regularly back into the city, but we are also seeing many folks who are going back in, but only 1 or 2 days a week. So when we had last discussed this, we talked about different treatments for the Quimby Street lot, which is the parking lot next to Westchester Collaborative Theater. It's about 32 spaces across from the old DPW site. And we had talked about making that a pay by the day, basically commuter parking lot. And basically it would be available, I think, Stuart, please correct me. We said 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
7 A to 7 P.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which hopefully will capture, the commuters who are not able to find a spot on the other side of the tracks. And then between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., it will be a muni lot for folks who live in the neighborhood and want to buy a nighttime pass. So the folks who are going to be paying to be there during the day would pay one rate for the 12 hours. It would be the same as what Metro North charges, which I think is $4.75 a day for that fixed amount of time. Whether they stay the entire 12 hours or only 5 hours, they still pay the same rate for that lot. Then sort of building on Trustee Fritchie's feedback, we decided to apply a slightly different treatment to Quimby Street, which is the sort of dog leg sticking off westerly, which has
Wait, but did you say that they would take tags for the night parking?
So during the day, they would pay for it through the passport
got
app.
that,
And
yeah.
then at night, if they had a municipal lot permit that's sold through the clerk's office for nighttime parking, they could use it in that parking lot as well.
So you'd have to move your car by 7 a.m.
That's correct.
But you could buy both. You could, regardless of whether you're a commuter or not, right? You could do the overnight tag and then pay $4 or $5 a day for the daytime.
You could, sure.
Okay.
So then speaking about Quimby Street, which again is on the other side of the tracks, along westerly headed towards the water. Trustee Fritchie had brought up a question about what about folks who want to go into the city a little bit later in the day if they're catching a sporting event or something of that nature, and they're not going to be home by 7 o'clock. So we thought we would apply a similar treatment to those parking spots by saying these are now paid by the hour. So you have a maximum of 24 hours that you can be there. That way, folks who are coming off the 129 from Grand Central can use those spaces and still, be legally parked when they arrive home. And it can also offset parking at the 3 Westerly restaurant. So folks will have spaces to park there, and they will pay by the hour. So that is the train station in a nutshell. Stuart, Sue, Chief, I don't know if there's anything I forgot from our conversation that you'd like to add.
Sue, how much are the tags, the overnight?
Overnight tags are $70 a night. Oh, a year, excuse me. Excuse me. I think that having the option of the Quimby Street on the west side of the tracks, having it for the people that come home late, at night and stuff is a good option to have, as well as to have the doing both on the east side of the tracks in the Quimby Street lot, because you have more residents down there, and we do have requests for people to have muni parking down there.
And the muni component wouldn't really be necessary on the other side of the track, since there's really no, housing units there, but for the ones at Harbor Square. Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'll move on to the next section.
I don't have a question. My challenge, and we don't have to discuss it, but it is cheaper to park every day and pay that amount and to buy the tag than it is to park in Westerly. Like the people live, it's actually cheaper to do that and take up those spots.
I think, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think, in order to keep our municipal lot permits competitive, we've sort of held those prices, even though we have the same experience in a couple different private apartment complexes throughout the village. Some places are providing parking to their residents, but charging $150 a month for a guaranteed spot. Anybody in their right mind would say, no, thank you, I'll pay $70 for the year and roll the dice. I mean, it's just a good business decision. I don't know that the answer to that necessarily is raising our rates to meet that. I think it's just, a fact of life, unfortunately.
If you park in that station lot without a yearly pass and pay daily, it's $1,200 a year.
Right.
All right, $1,200 to pay daily, $475.
That's $1,200, $100 a month.
However you want to cut it, it's $1,200.
No, I want to make sure that the people that can afford and should be in those spots stay there and not take over the places that are basically public in lieu of paying a fee that's been charged in that more luxury building scenario. And that's, I don't really know how to resolve it, I'm
Well,
just doing the math.
Remember one thing is if you're talking about any luxury accommodations down there, they're on the other side, they're on the west side of the tracks. So to pay the $475 and the $70 overnight, you'd have to walk across the bridge.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just thinking out loud because I think pricing is not about being competitive, not pricing is how you want to drive behavior in many ways. So I just want to make sure that we don't kick ourselves in the foot. That's all.
Yeah, we also have other buildings that have parking that people use overnight parking. And remember, it's first come, first serve. There's no reserved spots for them.
Yeah,
or
I
anything.
know. And do the overnight tags also allow, so I just don't remember this. I should, but I don't. Commercial vehicles as well?
No.
No.
Okay.
No commercial vehicles. And it's actually because we're first come, first serve in the muni parking, because that would be classified in the municipal parking. We are actually cracking down more on the commercial.
Okay. These are just questions. I'm not pushing back. I'm just asking some questions.
No, not at all. Not at all. But remember, you have more and more people living downtown, and again,
that's why I'm asking these questions. I want the people who live downtown where they don't have very many options to be able to benefit from options that other people that have many options don't take up those spots. I can't really get into those details. I'm just trying to think out the math. That's all.
No, I totally agree with you.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions about the train station plot?
I just, quick comment just to kind of piggyback on what the mayor said, we should be looking at, overall development and what does that look like, not just right now, but what is going to be 5 years from now. As we all know, we are looking into a property right now that is building, for now is a village owned property, sure. There are going to be affordable apartments. They are putting garage levels in there, several levels in there that's supposed to be providing parking for the community at large and that live in that complex. And obviously there's limitations for how many vehicles are you going to be able to allow to park. So if we start opening a little bit more than what we have, and we are only talking about one development. So to me, when we're talking about one portion of this, we should be looking at least in 5 years. And what does 5 years look like? Not just on here, but in any zone that we're going to be looking at overnight parking or just parking in general. That's to me, is like a general comment, not just a specific place, but general.
I think you have to remember that with this, we're not looking, this is current spaces, and every year you do a fee schedule, and we could evaluate constantly.
That's right.
And make any changes that have to be made. So I think that starting off, giving the people that are looking to go downtown 1 or 2 or 3 days a week, instead of buying a railroad station parking, to give them an option to have some daily parking down there, alongside with the MTA, which is currently done by a private company. They're parking down there. It gives more people the options that they need right now in this very, very influx economy that we have, so we satisfy those customers. And then to give a little bit more muni parking down there at night for some of those folks that live there now. You as a board can always readdress this at any time.
Right, we could do the fees. That's why I'm trying to do the math. So Sue, let me ask you a question, or Maddi, let me ask you a question. If the argument, at least for the upcoming year, is that there are fewer full-time commuters, right? So this is an option for what I would call part-time commuters, right? They're going in 2 days a week, right? That's where this conversation started. And then it also goes into other uses. Is Metro North looking at this with this private company to say, let's open up another 50 spots to be on meters rather than on tags? Or
they don't have the space for that.
The only
the village-
spots they have are metered spots, and they're using all of them.
They don't have, the space is village-owned property, the space is village-owned. It would be you that would be expanding that, not Metro North.
I
They
know,
don't-
but the full tag that you have to buy, you could open up some spots, another 50 spots, so you don't need tax for that. We would do that metered, like right in the Metro North park.
This is, yeah, in the Village of Austin parking lots now, yes, but this is step one. And this
Okay.
will give a lot of people options. We do have about 400 tags, railroad
Okay.
tags sold out there. We are doing it on we're waiting for the people to go back. So every month, everybody on the wait list gets an email and it says, are you ready to
Okay.
go back? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's good. Thank you. I thought it was more than 400, but thanks.
Right now, for this year, around four.
Okay,
around.
well, that's great. All right, sorry, Maddie, go ahead.
No, that's fine. The next component is sort of two parts. As the board is well aware, we are talking currently as part of one of our DRI projects, a project component is putting out an RFQ for development on the parking lots at Main and Spring Street. As we know, in both parking lots, there is a mix of parking types. Both both parking lots have room for municipal day or night tags, and the rest is 3 hours of free parking. So another recommendation from the Nelson Nygaard study is to, what's the word? Sorry, this has been a very, very long day, very early morning. To prioritize parking in areas where people are most likely to want to be. So as we know, both of those parking lots are the most centrally located in our village. They're the most near all of our shopping. Those are the most desirable parking spaces. And so in order to correct behavior and do what they call curb management, the recommendation is to begin charging for those spots. And so folks can be there and go on a shopping trip for half an hour, for an hour, for 4 hours, and they'll be paying through the Passport app to do that. Similar to the train station scenario, albeit with different hours, folks in the neighborhood would be able to use their municipal nighttime passes in all of the spots in both of those parking lots. I see nodding and I see, what else do I see? Thumbs up.
Good.
Okay. And at the same time, another recommendation based on our parking occupancy data is that right now we're charging at the meters between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. The occupancy data shows that we don't really have a parking problem. Well, we don't really have one at all. It's mostly a perception based on the study data. But between 8 and 10 a.m., there's really no shortage of parking in the areas that people want to be. So again, primarily on Main and Spring Street. So the recommendation was made to change the hours of metered parking from 8 to 6 to 10 to 8. So before we do that at the parking meters, we're going to do that at the same time in these parking lots. So basically, if you wanted to park anywhere in those two big parking lots between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m., you would pay $1 an hour through the app, and you can stay there as long as you want, so long as you're out by 8 o'clock. Certainly, we don't expect people are going to pay $1 an hour because that would be a lot of money. So hopefully that will encourage turnover, which is what we definitely want to see in those spots. And then again, at 8 p.m., folks would be able to use their Muni lot passes if they are living in the neighborhood or visiting someone who does. That would do from 8 until 8. And then from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., it would be free parking. So 2 hours free parking. Folks who want to run to the deli, get coffee, drop off dry cleaning, any errands that they want to run, we want to encourage them to do it during those hours when we know that there's going to be more parking available.
I'm still stuck on, we don't have a parking issue. It's a perception problem.
That's what the study said. You know, the difficulty.
But 2/15 of our DRI request is for parking.
I think part of the DRI program, and Karen, please correct me if you think I'm stating this incorrectly, is that we want to support 200 Main Street, want to support, you know, some of the other projects.
There's a couple of things. So the issue with the parking and why it's important, because you would be taking away 115 spaces of parking, that would definitely create a parking problem. The issue of the parking problem, I think that we have parking problems in certain areas, but for the, usually you can find a parking space, downtown if you need to go to the store. What's happening more currently, more recently, is because things are a bit more, a lot more going on there than was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. It's harder, and people were used to parking really close. We had, we talked to store owners who were used to parking in front of their shops. We talked to, so that's really the context that we're talking about. This would, some of the problems that we're hearing about now is that cars are staying in spots for a very long time. There's not enough turnover, which is problematic in a commercial district. So all of these things would create greater efficiencies where we have parking and augment what we, it would allow us to use what we have more efficiently. But again, if we did take it away to develop it, we would need to replace it.
And I apologize if you spoke about this because you guys froze for a second or two. Did we talk about moving employees to Central Avenue?
Nope, that's
No, we
next.
didn't, but thank you for bringing that up, because I think what the study also said is that a part of it, especially from one employer, is dominated by an employer, and employees could walk a little bit more. They don't need dropping off your dry cleaning when you have 2 kids with you and it's winter time. I could see wanting to be a little closer to that place, or even getting a cup of coffee if you're trying to run to the train station. But parking for 6 hours because you work somewhere, you certainly can walk another 3 minutes and park somewhere
I think
else.
one of the things that you'll find, and Maddi has done a great job with this, is that if in the 3-hour free parking which is parking lot 5, so it's on the corner of Spring and Main, it's mostly employees of the different businesses in there, which is against, if you're in retail or anything, it's against every rule in the book of parking
Yeah,
close
I
to
know.
where you.
Even in the malls, they charge employees to park, and they make them park all the way on the side. So yeah, we didn't argue that part of changing the 3 hours. That's one of the reasons. Okay.
I can go there at 10 o'clock and it will be packed. Yeah.
And I'll just add one more detail that maybe the chief can chime in on that will be especially helpful about this. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but the ability to use digital chalking is going to be really important here. So basically, right now, if one of our parking enforcement officers or police officers is going to check to see if a car has moved, they have to, do the thing with the tire stem and all this kind of stuff. If they have the app, they can scan the license plate and say, okay, this guy's paid up and he's done. They don't really need to worry about the turnover in the same way that they do now with chalking or digital chalking. Chief, did I get that mostly right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's obviously more precise. Always hold up better in court, so sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's sort of still on the table is we want to make sure for the households that either have 2 cars or folks who are working from home during the day, that they still have some place to park their car during the day if they have a Muni day permit and they're used to using those spaces that way. So we're going to propose keeping the spots in lots 5 and 6 that are Muni tag during the day. So it's 6 spots in lot 6 and I think 11 spots in lot 5. And then we can always change that later. But we again want to make sure that people who are depending on being able to use their Muni day tags still have someplace to park near to their homes.
Well, and some of the employers down there, especially if they work at 2325 Spring Street, they buy day passes for their employees. So yeah, it's much more expensive to buy a day pass than a night pass.
Yeah,
night passes are priced for the people that live there to make it reasonable.
So we're still just trying to preserve that mix. And again, this can pivot based on, the feedback that we get from the community. If everybody says this is working great, don't change a thing, we can keep it. If people are saying we need more spots and the permit people aren't using the spots anymore, then we can change that too. The last component is a really interesting one and actually came from a business owner here in Ossining when we were doing the study. The folks at Global Ironworks were sharing with us that their employees, when they come to work during the day, were having a really hard time finding parking for the entire day. We do have 2-hour parking on Central Avenue that goes about halfway down the road that's free. And they suggested, why can't you just make it 8 hours free parking? And that way, our employees will stay out of your way and, they'll be out of the mix. And we took that suggestion to heart and made it into the study. We think it's a really good idea. But we, in fact, want to go a little bit further. So as the board might recall, if you're going down Central Avenue, there's 2 metered spots on the right-hand side outside of the bookstore at the Opera House. And then there is, they're not individually spaced, but there's room for between 8 and 10 cars between those spots and the crosswalk. And we need to make sure, again, that they're clearing both steamer and monitor hose. And then after the crosswalk, all the spots are for commuter tags. So again, we're proposing that we repurpose what's about 20 spots on Central Avenue for the employee parking program. And what we're proposing, and this is definitely fluid, and we want to sort of see what the board's ideas are, is that we would enact a new kind of permit that again would be scannable by our license plate readers. That would be done by the quarter. You would come into the clerk's office, you would substantiate that you're an active employee of a downtown business. We would charge you a nominal fee just for the administration, and you would be allowed to park on Central Avenue for free, but for that very small administrative fee for the rest of the quarter. And Stuart, again, I don't remember what the times were that we said on that one.
Maddi, we did 7A to 6P, Monday to, or 7 days a week would be what we would call essentially the employees.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I thought that a little while ago, we talked about from an economic development point of view, you want to make sure that people who want to shop at places should have that convenience. People that work, their companies should pay for it. It's exactly like we're saying 2 different things, and we're talking about a distance and parking of like 90 yards. So what's happening here? Why should one place of business buy tags for their employees and another place of business have free for their employees?
We don't really, I mean, ideally businesses wouldn't be buying those municipal tags for their employees. We know that, Open Door has a very large population of cars buying those tags and then parking in downtown. As we have discussed, their purchase of the property at 2 Church Street is going to enable them to utilize that parking lot differently, so that hopefully they'll be getting at least some of their employees out of the municipal parking lots.
They think that all of their employees will be in the 2 Church parking lot. They will be moving their administrative offices. So that's something that we can, that's part of their, in the planning process, they have to meet certain parking objectives too.
Sorry, Karen, quick question on that one. I thought that the parking lot was not part of their building.
No, it is. It is. We ascertained it is, and they will be using it. When Lindsay did come to the meeting, Lindsay Farrell, CEO of Open Door, they think that they will have the ability to put their staff in the parking lot and address patients. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing.
They're not building a parking lot, Manny. They're using the same one.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that.
but there won't be ultimately there won't be other businesses there, so that parking lot will be
Which
there.
is fine. I think I agree with the mayor. Look, when I worked in Dawes Ferry, I was paying for parking on the street. I needed to have a proof that I worked there. Yes, a discount. And my recollection was that we were looking to have certain locations, certain parking lots, and assign in different areas so employees can park there. I don't remember until now that was brought up that we were thinking about giving just a free spot for them to park in different locations for administrative fee. So me personally, I just don't think that would be fair.
So
That's just how
It doesn't have to be an administrative fee. It doesn't have to be free. I think what the goal is to have people who are going to be long-term parkers, which are mainly employees, out of the main thoroughfare in whatever way is possible. And if that means the permit costs something more like what the muni permit costs, fine. But at least you have a dedicated area where a very narrowed scope of the downtown population is going to be parking their car. These are all imperfect solutions, right? I mean, we're not going to be able to capture every single nuance because, frankly, we don't have the room to put everybody in a place where they're going to be happy, at least not yet. So I think, when we identified Central Avenue, that was a place that folks were already parking. So we thought this would be a good start. We can certainly look at other streets that sort of satellite off of Main and Spring. That might also be good. But the challenge there is that there's a lot of housing on those streets. Central Avenue happens to just be, the firehouses and the Greenway. So there's really nobody competing for those spots. So we can certainly, further explore and discuss what the employee permit would cost. I don't think anyone would object to that, but the principle is to assign those cars to a place that's a little bit farther away.
And Central Avenue being a place that is the last place that they park for when we filled up the parking lots for the train station, Central Avenue would be the last place that anyone would park. It's not a place that any of your shoppers will park to walk up that hill to get back onto Main Street. So for employees, it sounded like a reasonable thing, but I totally agree with you. The discussion on the price of that tag is again, your prerogatives. And if Open Door, I don't know if I'm frozen, but if
Nope,
Open
we can hear
Door, okay, if Open Door moves some of their people out of our lots, it will also alleviate some situations that we have now. We're talking
Yeah,
about.
see, to me, in principle, it's easier to make sure that an employer like Open Door, who can afford it, should move their people off of all the lots than sit here and figure out how to find 8 spots here and 12 spots there and 13 spots somewhere else and price them all differently. People have to go to a place and know that between this and this, and there has to be some sort of headlines. Even though we have the capability to price by block, in the beginning, especially when you roll out an app, come up with everybody's on the same hours. The reasons some places went to 8 o'clock and ticked everybody off is because they're killing the restaurants. Most people go to restaurants, even happy hours at 6, and all of a sudden they show up and it's like, what? This community, it's like till 8 o'clock. Everybody's else till 6. So they're killing the restaurants that, count on people coming in for an hour or so and leaving. So, people have expectations, everybody should be charged sort of the same thing. And over time with an app, once you have data, because all we're doing now is predicting what will happen and pricing towards a prediction. We predict that Open Door will move all its people. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. A year ago, we predicted that they're going to build a parking lot, which now they're not. So I don't have anything against them. They're a large employer. They provide a great service. They are a totally well-run organization. They also eat up a lot of, this is a conversation about parking. They eat up a lot of parking. If they move their people to lots that they actually have, one employer that we can solve for, all the rest of this conversation actually becomes a moot point because there'll be enough spots. And you charge what you need to charge. Huh?
Sorry. This conversation is really about opening up spots in parking lot 5, which is Spring and Main, for the people that we want people to shop there and move some of those employees of those little shops and everything out of there.
Right.
So, out of the free parking. That's how this started.
No, the free parking,
Door,
nobody objected to that. The free parking, nobody said it. That was already, it was presented to the board and Maddi said, nobody is saying anything. That usually means we're sort of in agreement, so we moved on. We are going to charge. Now comes the other part.
I'm going to tell you, Open Door presently, 2 Church Street is not going to be big enough for them. So they're gonna continue to park in the.
Couldn't agree with you more, Sue. That's
So-
why I
So,
think that.
so, you know what, I think though, like, let's not, right now, they're, according to them, and I can't predict what they will or won't do, we don't know. But a large portion of their employees will no longer be working in Ossining. That is what we were told.
Okay.
So
Oh,
there will be some shift. And the businesses that are currently in 2 Church Street are not going to be there any longer. So the
Right.
bank and everything else. So again, that is the current plan. We'll see what happens. Plans are
Yeah.
always change.
But can we,
The-
I'm sorry,
okay.
can we just concentrate on the parking issue? Look, and
Right.
I understand we're talking about open door. To me, is irrelevant of who we're talking about. We're talking about, the fees and to the employees and employers and actually employees they're going to be using. It doesn't
Right.
matter. We don't want to do a policy based on what open door does. I think we want to concentrate at a larger scale of what a business is doing. So I just want to kind of bring that back a little.
That was my point,
Yeah.
Manny. My point was, I don't want to do it based on what people tell us will happen someday. When it does, we'll have the data and then we make decisions and we see the changes. B, we're doing this for consumers, some areas for residents. And then we got into issues about employees. Employees pay and they work somewhere. Either their employer can subsidize it, not subsidize, it's up to them, don't really care. But I'm uncomfortable with all these decisioning over a block here and a block there and different pricing in different blocks. I mean, these blocks are 50 feet away from each other. These are not, our entire downtown is 150 yards, 200 yards of walking from one lot to the other. So I just think consistency is really important.
Mayor, one of the things that we can do, because none of these, like, again, as Maddi was saying, everything is subject to trial and change, and we don't want to continuously do that.
Right.
The major issue, and I think this is really key, is that we need, one of the ways that you can prevent any employer from parking in the muni lots is have them metered for turnover. Right now, as consistency would be the thing that we do not have with parking on Main Street area. So one of the things that by metering the muni lots, and we can do, we can do one price, but metering them and having, time limits prevents people from staying there all day. So they're going to be forced by default to park somewhere else. By pricing these and metering them different, you incentivize the shift of the all-day parkers there. They have to move by default. And then, so we can look at ways of maybe streamlining some of these recommendations so there's more consistency. But keep in mind right now, we have no consistency in any one parking lot at all. And that is really, we're actually working towards greater consistency and filling the turnover need where we need it most, and on the outskirts of parking, having the longer term parking so that employees have a place to park.
I got a couple things. Central Avenue, I'm okay with that, but if they pay the fee, the employer pay, whoever pays the fee for the employee, is that something that can be duly noted and then it, instead of putting a tag, they just, when they park there, their license plate is registered when they drive by with the car plate reader, they know that's an employer or employee. That's number one.
It'll be a digital permit, just like all the other ones we have. Yeah.
Now my other thing is, I pull in, I want to go to the deli and get a cup of coffee or sandwich. Is there a gratis time, like a 20-minute, 50-minute time in these parking spaces before you have to, so if you're gonna be there for an hour, you gotta clock in.
You
Well,
can still hit the 10-minute button at the spots that have a physical parking meter.
Okay.
But as for the other parking spaces, there would not. You'd be rolling the dice on if a parking enforcement officer showed up in that 5-10 minutes.
So, no, I understand that. Me personally, the free parking lot should be metered. With the same thing, the 10-minute button. So if I can't come down Spring Street, I don't want to cross over to get on the other side to go to the deli. I pull in there, I do my 10-minute button, jump across the street, get my stuff and go. But after that, it should be metered. That'll eliminate anything that goes on there. These
Yeah, but
people
you
that are,
can't-
these
you don't have
employees that
physical
are parking
meters.
there, they need to go. All right, that's for shoppers. That's an overflow for shoppers. All right, if you're gonna be there more than 10 minutes, you pay to park, because it's gonna drive people to do what they gotta do and get out. Should be.
You
made.
don't have physical meters for the non-metered lots right now. You don't own them, period. You know,
Trustee Fritchie,
you
I know
barely
what you're
have-
saying, that if you wanted to pay by the app, can you have a free 10-minute function where you wouldn't have to pay? I don't know how we would be able to build that in. So to Sue's point, because in those parking spots, there isn't a physical parking meter, it would be difficult to do the free 10 minutes the way we can on the street.
You're just gonna number them and you'd have to go and.
Right, but so you're telling me if I go in there to buy bacon, egg, and cheese at the deli, I gotta go onto the app.
Yeah.
To go into that. That to
How
me-
much is the cost for an hour?
It'll be $1.25, including the processing fee.
That's ridiculous.
But you have to remember that if you're going in, first of all, if you're going in for a bacon, egg, and cheese, it's going to be, the timing is going to be different. So it'll be 8 till 10 will be all free. So that's bacon, egg, and cheese time. And also, if you go down there during that time, there isn't a time that I go down there early that the metered parking in front of the delis, plural, or, for your example, doesn't have space in it. What fills up first is the free parking lot, because it fills up with employees and it fills up with,
That's what I'm trying to get out of that lot. Is the
Right.
to meter
So
it.
that's why the metering is key.
Absolutely.
Okay, I
So
think that
I think the key is the 8 to 10 free time, because that is, people are running down to the train station, they want to stop at a deli, period,
That'll be free by default, so.
by
Right,
default.
but then again, the chances of lunchtime, you go in there and you got your working guys that are going in there for lunch, plus they gotta pay for parking.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just.
It's $1, yeah.
Maddi, what's the minimum amount of time on that app?
We set it for all of the current parking spaces, even the ones that are at 15 minutes and 30 minutes, at $1. You have to pay for a whole hour, whether you use it or not. Otherwise, we start to lose money on those transactions. We could explore for those parking lots if we wanted to do something different and see how it worked. I don't know how many people would do that if they had an option, right? Like if you could park on the street and just hit the 10-minute button, you would certainly rather do that than go into the lot and pay whatever it would be, 50 cents to go run across the street and get a sandwich. But that's probably the best that we can do. There's really no way to give 10 free minutes without having to charge the person anything.
Okay, well, you're getting a big chunk of the day's time free, and the trade-off for that is that you're charging $1, which is, at least in Westchester County and almost every community is still on the pretty inexpensive side of the conversation. Can we move on to the next thing? Because
I'm
looking at the
not
clock
done
here.
with my discussion, so give me my time, please.
All right, oh, you have more? I'm sorry,
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
do, because now you're gonna make somebody pay. It's, yes, it's not a lot of money. It's the principle at that point. All right, oh, I gotta pay to park to go get a sandwich. They're gonna drive business away. You might say, no, it's only about, trust me, it'll drive business away, because it makes no sense to have to pay for me to pay to go get a sandwich when I'm there for 10 or 15 minutes, no matter what time of the day it is. That just makes no sense to me. I'm
But
sorry.
you're paying that to get a cup of coffee. You're paying today. I mean,
That's coffee. Why should I pay to park to go get a cup of coffee?
because that's what it is today. That's what it's been forever.
Disagree. Everybody goes down there when it was regular meters. They didn't put money in them meters when they went in for a sandwich. They never put in it. If they did, they're a way different
So,
person.
I think that like here's the thing, we certainly don't want to have people not, the challenge that we have is, and I think there's some, I think we can look at maybe a half-hour minimum. If we start losing money, it's not good. I do understand what you're saying, Trustee Fritchie. We do have a lot of a lunch crowd that goes down there. A lot of our employees go down and have lunch. And not a lot of the stores down there have their own parking lot, which would be free parking. So I get that. I think it's something that let us look at, because you still have, remember, you'd have the 10-minute parking all along the street where the meters are. So that's going to be 10 minutes. So it's not like you won't have that option, like it'll be taken away. So you still likely are going to be able to drop in, get something to eat and leave and do it pretty quickly. Or pay a quarter if you're there for longer than 10 minutes. So I think it's something that like we have to, I think this is going back to what Maddi said before. Perfection's the enemy of the good here. We have the ability to try different things. If they don't work, it's not the end of the world. We move forward and we do something else. But right now, it is a huge, and we're not looking to make money, but with the, the money that we get from parking revenue does offset things that otherwise have to come out of other people's, different pockets. So we're losing a lot, especially because the meters haven't been used and enforcement's been more challenging. And so these are, this is a way to sort of create a revenue stream that does provide added benefit to people, because that money is reinvested in a number of things that make our community better. So, so I just want to say, like, I understand, I think Trustee Fraioli has a good point. And if businesses complain that their lunch crowd isn't coming in because no one wants to pay to park, but I'm not 100% sure we'll have that issue given the fact that we do have significant number of meters on the street.
Thank you, Karen. And Trustee Fraioli, I think your point is well taken. Certainly driving, in that neighborhood during the day, you see a lot of guys just, pull in and quick run in and, certainly are not going to want to go across the street and then on top of it have to whip out their phone and go through the whole, song and dance. I have another thought that I would want to discuss with Paul, but I think there might be a workaround that I hadn't considered before. So I'm going to keep that under my hat until I guarantee with him that it's something that will work, but I think I have thought of a creative solution. Unless anybody has any other questions, that is it for this portion of the conversation. Unless, again, Karen, Sue, Chief, you have anything that you wanted to add?
I guess just Maddi, and thank you. I guess the other portion that you actually mentioned or was mentioned, I guess, in this conversation several times is enforcement, sure. And how is that going to be taking place? It doesn't matter if it's like 10 minutes overlap that right now we have or an hour we have. So I guess the question is for the chief. So regarding to enforcement, now that we have sort of an idea, because the Passport app has been working for a few months now, for more than a few weeks now. How is that enforcement, or what have you seen so far on that perspective?
In terms of the numbers of tickets written, or people using the meters, or
in general, just in general, everything from tickets and people using, have they got complaints, to the parking officers? Because you also you made a note on your Facebook page in regards to overnight use on municipal parking lots would be equal for commercial vehicles. So we'd like to have like an overall idea on what the enforcement has been and what it has been going on right now, and what have you seen that we could utilize into advantage that we can improve this.
So that was like a lot of different things.
I know.
I think most of that's related to what we're even talking about. The message on the Facebook page was a repost of the village's new legislation dealing with commercial vehicles and how they're defined in municipal lots. And that's not necessarily related to this. So
I know it's regards to enforcement though. That's what I was saying. Enforcement in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, with digital enforcement, it's been increased because it's easier to write them. In terms of the ease of use, I mean, look, it's still building out. We don't have full resources on everything, but as it continues to build and people continue to use it, then we're there. I mean, once we have plate readers on all the vehicles and things like that start coming along, then that's obviously even more. But right now, I mean, everything's working fine. Yeah, they're out there. They're using the handhelds. Tickets are up. In terms of usage of the meters, that's a Maddi question.
Okay, so tickets wise, in a regular day on Main Street and parts of, I guess, Spring Street and all that area. So you're saying that it has increased?
To my knowledge, I don't have numbers off the top of my head.
Okay.
We discussed that tonight, so I didn't write them.
Now,
People People are reacting to the fact that they cannot sit there with expired permits anymore, you know, and not that it was anymore, but if they gamble and they took their chances. We are getting good compliance with train station. I want to thank the police department for all of that. So we are getting more and more people reacting to it and buying their stuff because of the fact that the police have the ability to check, everything is done by license plate readers. We had a terrible situation with municipal parking before where people would just swap out the tag they would send in somebody into court with a tag, you know, it was crazy. So I want to compliment the police department on that. Their enforcement is getting better and better all the time because of the fact that they have the ability to use the license plate readers.
Okay, so that's obviously good to hear. Maddi, refresh my memory in regards to the enforcement of the passport. What was that time frame that we said that we're going to go back to look at what has been going on in there?
So I think the missing component is that we still talked about doing a coin audit at the meters, which is something that, you know, there was a machine that came with the parking meters and, you know, it needed a new software update and all that kind of stuff. So what we'd like to do is once we get that machine up and running, have a month or two under our belt where we can, you know, show the coin count. Unfortunately, because it hasn't been done for years, we don't have, you know, anything to compare it to. But we could certainly over time, once we have that baseline, compare how many people are using the app to how many people are using quarters. I will say that because we have removed a handful of parking meters and we got, you know, all the backlog ones fixed, we have, you know, heard less complaints, I think, at least speaking to the parking enforcement officers, about people saying that, you know, my meter is jammed and I can't use this. I think it's a slow evolution because I think there's a lot of moving pieces. And I think as what Stuart said at the beginning of the conversation, everything you touch has an unintended consequence with this parking ecosystem. So
I agree. Parking
yeah.
itself is a big complex issue, you know, is just as parking in general, I think is a big, you know, complex issue within itself, not just about meters, sure. So when do you expect to have this sort of study? Because we're coming up, look, we're not even in the summer, but I'm thinking about budget. What does that look like, sure? And what does that mean for next year? And what kind of stuff can we do to help our police department to enforce, like the chief said, you know, when we have the meter, you know, the readers, the plate readers and all this other stuff. So I want to make sure that we have all that information we need to make the decisions we need to take on a budget level. So when do you think you'll have this done? Or when do you expect to have, because that also is going to implementation of what we are talking about right now for parking, sure, and it goes back hand to hand for enforcement. That's the reason why I'm asking these questions.
That is a very layered question, so I'm gonna answer it in two ways. The first one is I'm gonna say my hope is that by September we'll at least have the baseline of the coin audit for the meters, and again that's contingent upon having the software upgrades, getting the right battery that we need for this very ancient coin counter, and getting it out on the road with somebody who knows how to use it. So as we're moving into budget time, we should at least have the baseline. So by the time we adopt the budget, we'll have a better idea of what our revenue for 2023 should look like between the coins and the app revenue. The second component of the question, I've lost my train of thought. I forget what the second piece of it was. Oh, well, in terms of, you know, implementation for this part of the parking, I think our hope is that at the very least, the train station component of this will go forward sooner rather than later. My hope is that all of it will, but I understand that the employee thing is maybe something we need to do a little bit more homework on. And it sounds like maybe the spots in lots 5 and 6 might also need a second look after Trustee Fritchie made a very important point. So our hope is that will be in place well before we get into budget time. And then obviously that'll be able to be integrated into this audit as we consider revenues for next year.
That'd be helpful. I guess just as a comment, as a general, sure. Many years ago, I want to say 6 years ago, there was a group of people actually looking into the train station and parking lots itself as an overall, and I was asked to help them out and things of that nature because I had some information between actually the police department and some of the stuff that we had about parking and how many spaces we have and everything else. So is there a way to produce a map? And I know, okay, so I don't need to say anything else. I think you know where I'm going, Maddi.
I just because I'm very excited. So Trustee White and I were on a walking tour today of downtown Syracuse. And actually the folks that were leading the tour were telling us about all these amazing things that they've been able to do to help their businesses, things that we actually would be allowed to do as a municipality. And one of those things was a parking map that you could get with a QR code. It's available on their website. It's something that, we could probably do very easily between Jaime and myself. So we can certainly do it now and then update it as changes come down the pike incrementally. But I think that was something that, Trustee White, I don't want to speak for you, but we were both like, woo, like this is something we can knock out pretty quickly.
Yeah. So and they guess that some people, not many people, a handful of people have asked me. He's like, when you go to New York City, sure, there's a bunch of apps that you can just try to download and see if you can find a spot or at least the locations of those. Is there any way that we can translate that into a portable map or make it use part of the app that we have right now? I guess.
I don't
not to count how many empty spaces we have, but at least just the locations of parking areas are available in our village.
I'm not sure if Passport has that integration. Some of the other apps that we looked at did something similar, but they did it with like GPS data. And I don't remember exactly how they did it, but it wasn't anywhere close to an exact science. They would basically tell you, hey, if you're looking for a parking spot right now, we think you could probably get a parking spot over here. I don't know how helpful that would be, even if that was a program.
No. Yeah, I'm not talking about finding the spots. I'm talking about finding the parking lots itself.
Yeah, I think, this is another, good point that we're talking about final design on the big bellies and QR codes that can go on things. If that's something that we could have on our website, like a live up-to-date parking map, we can have the QR code all over the place. You walk by any wayfinding sign, you snap it and you're like, oh, this is where I could go.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that technology portion, would be very helpful to us to have of the ability to share that with our community, because it would be, look, that's something I thought I could do it. And I think at that time I was looking into Google Maps and trying to map out some of the stuff in there and see if we can have that more like a live integration. And it was just overall downtown. And obviously I was looking into that's a totally different conversation, not today's conversation, but the overnight street.
Right.
And I think you and I talked about briefly
absolutely
2 years back. So that's something I think it will be very helpful at some point of time, just to have our community be like, this is Monday through Friday, whatever the case, the alternate size and everything, or like for emergency roads. I think having the ability to do that, I think would be very helpful for this phase one sort of portion of it.
100%. I think the hardship would be even easier, because that's a very easily defined, set of stripes. This other one's probably going to be a little bit more complicated, but yes, I can commit to getting that done. I think that's something that we can be excited about and get done quickly.
Cool. Thank you, Maddi. I don't have anything else right now.
Okay, anybody else? I'm being cognizant also of the time in the evening. Maddi, you had three things. You did them in order of priority. I don't think most important, least important, but you just sort of clustered them into probably what the commuter versus downtown versus employees, which I appreciate. I think you got some answers based on the consultants. I think the next parking conversation, and this will be like herding cats to the nth degree, is residential parking issues. Which has to come up and has to be scheduled, and Sue and Chief Sylvester have to be in on that conversation. We've got to look at what's going on with residential parking. And yes, our residents and our commercial over the past 15 years have converged. There used to be really delineation between deeply residential to deeply commercial, and now there's that convergence of mixed. But I think we're going to need to see where the trends are, what's going on, and same conversation. What are we trying to do? How do we price to get to that goal? And who is using the intentions that we have out there? And what new trends were there? Had a conversation about Airbnb and what that does to parking issues and all sorts of things. So
some of that conversation is not for tonight, but just like this conversation, I think I'd like to at least ask for a follow-up with parking on the residential side. That would be helpful as well.
And I also owe the board a refresher document that I was going to try to do every 2 months, but now I'm 3 months behind. Just basically showing all the recommendations from the parking plan and showing where we are with them and what the next step is. We were hoping to tackle the hardship parking during the summer, so that might be a little bit behind, but that is built into the timeline. Yeah,
So summer has a couple more months. Thank you for smiling. I appreciate it. And I appreciate that you've probably been up, as you said, since early this morning. You have the tree, so I forgot that you were actually at a conference. You're probably in a hotel room. Anyway, can we go to the next topic, please? Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry.
Do we want to table the in lieu just because it's getting?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
We need to
Thank
move
you,
on.
thank you,
I just say
Maddi.
one thing.
Yes,
I'd like to thank everybody involved with the rework in front of 83 Croton Avenue, the bar with the drive-through lane and the left turn lane.
Oh, that, yeah.
I like it. I think it works well. We kept taxis out of there. My next target is the one space.
Sherwood, I know.
Sherwood Avenue.
I haven't forgotten.
It's bad. It's bad. You can't see there.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Great job. Let's move on.
I want to just want to say kudos to everyone too, because I come down that street every single morning and go back up every single night. And I've lived here for 38 years. And one day I said, when did we put parking spots in here? But they were always there. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I
Thank
don't know who
you,
needs to
thank
stay
you.
on, but you each know whether you need to stay on or not. Karen?
yes. So next we have our treasurer, Dale Brennan, will be talking to us about the need to establish a capital project bond resolution for 2022 for our capital plan purchases. So with that, I will turn it over to Treasurer Brennan.
Hello, Dale.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
We got to savor the happy occasions. I'm not trying to get personal. It's not about that. It's just savoring some happy moments in people's lives. Okay, you're on.
I thank you. I appreciate it very much. So I had sent out a memo last Friday. This capital project is actually phase 2 of our sidewalk improvement projects. In 2021, the board had approved $400,000 for sidewalk improvements to James Street. $200,000 is funded by the village through a bond resolution, and $200,000 is actually funded by a CDBG grant. So now this year, this is phase 2 of the sidewalk capital improvement project, and it focuses on Spring Street. The funding is the same. We will have a bond resolution for $200,000 to be borrowed and $200,000 that will be a CDBG grant portion. Any questions?
When can Paul start?
I didn't get to unmute quickly enough. Sorry, guys.
Paul?
Yeah. So the reason I am joining Dale with this part of the presentation is because the James Street project, if you remember, a couple of years back, was part of this present funding cycle for CDBG. And the original schedule really had us complete with that project already. The only reason Dale went out to bond and establish a project is because as part of the CDBG effort, the money, the municipality that receives the money is required to do the soft costs that need to complement the efforts by the county planning department, in this case, surveying costs. So there was a $19,000 survey cost for James Street that the village had to fund capital project for the county to get the plans, the surveys, and create the construction documents. However, they are, if they started on working on this project at all, it was very recently. So it's highly unlikely that we're going to get in the ground with that project this year. And because of that delay, and the fact that they're looking to, and the reason Dale is establishing the Spring Street project, they're now looking for the village to spend money on another survey for the next funding cycle for the Spring Street sidewalk improvements. So this will be 2 surveys that we paid for, but we don't have any documents in return for that. So Karen and I were talking about it the other day and said, you know, why don't we go down to the county and say, look, maybe we'll consider creating this capital project like we're doing tonight with the concept of creating one big capital project and maybe get an economy of scale by getting everything surveyed at once and everything and construction documents created at one time and going out to bid at one time, because James Street really is part of, you know, it intersects Spring, but it is in that general area south of Broad, and that might benefit us. And we have a meeting with them presently scheduled for the 23rd to see if they'll consider that option. But if one way or another, we need to fund this survey, and that's why Dale's creating the capital project tonight.
Okay. Comments, questions?
I'm just gonna have a very and I'm gonna be blunt, a very sarcastic comment. And I know this is again very sarcastic. I wish we could actually be talking about the connection between James and Hunter Street as well. And I know that's just a dream, very, very far dream away. But is any way possible that at some point in time that we can actually make that connection, since that a particular developer will never do anything on a project where he was supposed to be paying for that? Is there anything that you can think of, Paul? Because I think that will be not just fixing James Street, but I think will be very nice to tie in the whole thing that we've been talking about for years now.
Well, I think it's fair to say that if it ever formally becomes not part of the site plan approval for the 34 State Street project, the village can then go back to the county and say, hey, can we add this to the scope?
Yeah, but so taking it away from that site plan, sure, and I don't want to deviate of the conversation, and we can have an outside conversation about that. I mean, we did, it's part of the approvals, just like the water line relining on Hunter Street as well, that finally, after many years, we got our money back. But I would like to treat it, if possible, at some point, something similar to that effect, where we take over, we have the drawings.
Yeah, well, the difference here is that the water main was a reimbursement for the work that we did. This would be an offsite improvement, but the offsite improvement of the path is also part of their stormwater measures that they're putting in place. Part of the stormwater leaves the site on James Street and is conveyed through a stormwater line that they're going to repair.
Okay.
In that path
we can
area.
have that. We can have that conversation offline. I was just being sarcastic comment, because I think it will be very nice to have that done, you know, with this, hopefully with James Street newly paved. You know, that's it. But thank you.
Yeah, point taken.
Okay.
And we'll see where it is when we eventually get the documents from the county.
Okay. Any
And
other
we'll
comments?
sorry.
Sorry, Paul.
I was gonna say, and we'll update you once we meet with the county to see if they like our concept. But again, thank you for the Dale's presentation, because we are going to have the money in place one way or another to start with the survey.
Okay, anybody else? Comments or questions? I mean, for me, this is straightforward, but others might have. What do you need from us at this exact moment in time? Dale, Paul, anybody?
Right now, if everybody is approving, the bond resolution and the capital budget adjustment will be presented for formal vote on the 6:15 meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Village manager.
Next, we have a community benefit fund that ties to the overlay district that allows developers who want to take advantage of the 5th floor. We need to set the fees for that. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Corporation Counsel and our Director of Planning.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, folks. The public hearing on the special permit for density bonus for 31 Croton Avenue is scheduled for next Wednesday. As part of the code, the granting of the permit, there also is a fee that is to be assessed against the applicant, assuming the permit is granted, and that money goes into what's called a community benefit fund. And as it notes in the code, the fund may support the needs of the village to support parking, civic spaces, schools, or other legitimate public purposes as defined by the village. So really, we're coming before the board to get a sense from the board as to what that fee should be. As I noted in my memo to the board from this past Monday, for the recreation fee, we charge $7,500 per unit, except for affordables, it's $5,000. And as the planning director pointed out, since this density bonus would add one additional unit, so it would effectively be 1 times 7,500 or $7,500. We then had some back and forth, Maddi, Jaime, and myself, as to how do you calculate it if it's commercial that the person is rather than residential, because we would want the rates to essentially equate so that there's not someone says, well, it's cheaper if I do residential as compared to if I do commercial. So we were sort of working that out, but this is really what we're coming before you folks. And the reason it's important is that, as we've said, there is an application right now before this board for a special permit for a density bonus in the downtown overlay district. And certainly when the site plan is approved by the planning board, that resolution would include reference to the fee that is to be assessed against the owner. So it's important that we get a sense from this board as to what they think the appropriate fee should be. As I said, we charge now $7,500 with regard to a rec fee. There was one place which is out on Long Island that charges 2.5% of the fair market value, but that's really more with a subdivision situation more than anything. The funds here would be what I would think would be important to me would be in a special fund, which would be considered a community development, if you want to call it trust fund, and monies would go for that particular purpose. One question that I presented to the board, something to think about, is should those funds, and should those funds be essentially devoted just to the downtown overlay district, or can they be community benefit funds that essentially go wherever the board wants to use it, as long as it's for one of those areas that are for consideration? So that's really what we're looking at, but we do need some guidance from the board as to where they think that fee should be, because as I said, we have an application pending, And it will be something that will have to be made part of the village's fee schedule.
I'm sorry, Stuart, this would be in addition to a rec fee?
No. The rec fee was just as an example as to what we charge. Currently, if the planning board makes a determination that recreation services should be provided, but cannot be provided on site or at another location, the board has determined that there would be a charge of $7,500 per unit per unit or per lot, or $5,000 per affordable unit. We were bandying about the $7,500 is simply being comparable for what would be paid into the community benefit fund. The difference here being it wouldn't be for every unit that's being put up in the building, but just for the additional unit or additional commercial space that is being developed in that added area. In this case, it would be one unit. So 1 times 7,500 would be a $7,500 assessment to the community development fund or community benefit fund.
So we agree to 7,500, and the rec fee comes, and they can't provide the recreation facility. They had to pay the rec fee plus the additional for dwelling, correct?
Theoretically, that would be correct.
No, but I think the rec fee only goes for certain size development. It doesn't go for every development size, doesn't it?
That's not my question. I didn't ask for where it was. I said whoever it is that can't provide it pays a rec fee for whatever units, how many units. And if they have a density bonus, they've got to pay the rec fee for that extra unit plus the density bonus fee.
So the rec fee comes at the discretion of the planning board. So it's a may charge, not a shall charge. And so this type of fee would be considered a shall charge. So in the instance where you get the density, you would have to pay that bonus. The planning board, however, does have the discretion to not charge a rec fee, regardless of how they see things. They do not have to charge the recreation fee unless they deem it appropriate to charge it.
I understand that, but that's not what my question was. I understand who can determine what. I don't.
No, I guess maybe I'm not answering it well.
I understand exactly what it is. The planning board has the right to do what they got to do. I understand that. But in the instance that they're charging a rec fee, all right, and there's a density bonus unit, they get hit twice. That's my point. Theoretically, that's what should be happening.
Theoretically, yeah, it could
You are
happen.
correct. That could occur where they could be assessed both a rec fee and they could be assessed a community benefit fund fee. That
In lieu of parking.
No, in lieu of parking, this has nothing to do with in lieu of parking.
Nothing to do with parking.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's just another fee.
It could well, but again, Mayor, if you were in a zone where you basically had to provide parking and could not, yeah, there could also be an in lieu fee as well.
All right, but it's just a fee at this point.
It would be a fee that could be assessed. That is correct, an additional fee.
Okay, so the question is how much?
Correct.
And you're simply giving the example based on something else that we
I'm
charge.
providing the example. The board should know that the fee for the special permit is $1,500 plus $100 for each unit constructed. In the case of 31 Croton Avenue, that was 15 plus 500, I believe. So I guess it would be $2,000 would have been and that's the fee just to come before this board to ask for the special permit. But that is already in the fee schedule.
Okay, so what we're deciding on whether that's the right amount, more or less, right? I mean, there are only 3 options. Yes, that sounds right. No, we should charge more. No, we should charge less, correct?
just get a sense, right? As I said, the $7,500 is what you already have for another fee that's already in your code under your planning department.
And also just, this is for the board, just keep in mind that we can change that fee at any year, at any time through the year. If we feel like that is not appropriate, or if it's too low, if it's too high, we control the fee schedule itself. So it doesn't matter what the right amount, we don't have to have, we can get guess, it doesn't have to be the right amount. Future board can change it in 5 years from now.
Okay. But again, pricing is about what you want to accomplish. You charge very little to get one thing done. You charge a lot to do something else with it. Pricing is a strategy. It isn't about the dollar sign. It's really, we get very caught up in the amounts because we are trying to guess. We don't have a lot of data. So that's why we end up discussing the amounts. But the issue is, what's our intended desired outcome? What are we trying to accomplish? That should drive a strategy of what to charge. Therefore, what Bob was saying, okay, so theoretically somebody could end up paying both fees, so you should take that into consideration. Or the planning board, in theory, should take that into consideration. So what are we trying to accomplish with this fee is how you decide whether it should be a small, medium, or large fee, and what that looks like. It's hard to do without data, is I think one of the issues. It's hard to do pricing without data points. So you're left to intention.
I'll be comfortable with the 7,500 right now.
You just have to tell me why. I mean, honestly, I'm not being cute. I just need to know why that your gut goes with.
No, it's not the gut right now. From what I'm looking at the data, not the data, sort of the numbers that the emails that was sent out by Stuart, some of the stuff that was confirmed by Jaime. I think right now, and just kind of match what we have already, I think is something that it could be fair. Again, Mayor, we can always decide to change. I mean, we only looking at, and again, this is just for the overall
overlay.
The overlay, thank you. The overlay itself. How many units or how many spaces are we going to see? Are we going to see 100? Are we going to see this? And this is just based on one additional unit. If there are other developers that would like to develop their site, they're going to have a lot of restrictions within the site itself. So I just don't see that being the case. Again, we can look into this. Obviously, we have one person that is looking into do something like this that will get affected. What does that look like? What are the fees? Where the planning board will ask them to pay the reg fees? Maybe, So now we're talking about close to what, $15,000 portion of it. Again, so it all depends. But I feel comfortable right now with matching what we already have as part of that fee. So
Okay.
yeah.
Anybody else?
I would be fine with what Manny said, although my number to throw that out there would be much lower. So I would go for something like $1,000 or something like that. The rationale for that is that if we're actually trying to use this money for like what in our code it says support parking, civic spaces, schools, and other legitimate public purposes, like how far is $7,500 really going to get you when it comes to those kinds of things? Functionally, it's not really going to get you much. And so if it's not actually substantively getting you much, then why not make it something that is more nominal? It's already in the code, so we just need to give a number associated with it. And then if it turns out, looking at the numbers, it's like, hey, we're missing out on this like huge revenue generator. And with this amount of money, we would be able to do this beautification. We'd be able to do this great project, this awesome landscaping, this whatever. And this is where the money would come from. So we should definitely do this. But I don't really hear that. I really hear like we're trying to come up with a number that matches what's going to be reasonable and not going to be an impediment for people doing what they have to do. So my proposal would be 1,000, but I would be comfortable with the 7,500 that Manny gave, just so we could move on with that line.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I'm good with the match, 7,500.
Okay, so I'm okay with the 7,500 because my vision, my rationale is that, I mean, and it could be 6,000, but it's somewhere around there. Is that most of the overlay district is not huge development because that would go through a whole different stream. It's probably more on the small side, and I want beautification added. If this were a larger developer, we would say, we want plantings, we want grass, we want you to fix the drainage that leads to whatever, right? But we don't do that with the smaller size unless it's specific to that property, but we generally don't go outside the envelope that encompasses it. But I do want that because I'm just driving around this community and some of the overlay districts beginning to look a little like it needs some beautification, and I would take schools out of that equation. The village doesn't collect money to support schools. School has its own taxing entity, and it's far greater than our capacity and capability. So I would just take the word schools out of there. In the write-up, you mentioned civic, whatever. it's schools.
Mayor, we can't, it's unfortunately, it's in the code. We just, but the determination of how the funds are spent is the board.
Okay, that's fine. I just don't like that loose end because it opens up a door I don't want to open. It should go the other way around. Yeah, they're a taxing entity on their own. Okay, if we can't change it, it's a code, that's a code change. That's a different conversation for a different day. So we'll leave that alone.
The
Because
only other thing I would mention, Mayor, and I want to thank Jaime for this, is that 7,500, that would be per unit if there's a dwelling unit constructed. If we're talking about commercial space that's being added,
right,
the suggestion was $750 per 1,000 feet of rentable space, which would work out to be $7,500 for 1,000 square feet.
which is the size of a small unit, residential
So
unit.
basically, that's where we would sort of
And
come out.
theoretically, you're using the commercial unit as a business. That's why it's called a commercial unit. So that's, I think, probably a fair, sounds to me like a fair number that Jaime came up with. So I'm in support of that. Sounds fair. And again, in 6 months, either before the budget or later, if we see that somebody comes in front of us and says, look, I understand why you passed this, but let me tell you the effect it has and what it's doing to our ability to do X, Y, and Z, then we could change it. If we hit the mark incorrectly, to everybody else's point. So I think you've got Dana. Are you good with the?
I'm gonna be perfectly honest here. It's
it's
completely
late.
arbitrary. It is arbitrary to me. I have no idea how much to charge.
Okay.
To me, you know what? It's like fee after fee after fee after fee. I mean, I'm glad I don't build anything. I mean, it's a lot. And I don't know. It's a lot of fees. And
Well, not every developer pays all
lot
the
to
fees.
me. Huh?
Not everybody pays all the fees. Some
No, I
people,
know.
depending on what they do, pay certain fees. And it's not uncommon practice across every municipality.
I think it's high. I would do lower, but I agree with Omar, but I really feel out of my depth on this because I have no idea what to charge. So you got, I don't.
Okay.
I'm new at this. I don't know,
All right, and the planning board does have the right to say, hey, you pay this fee, but you don't pay that fee or whatever, right?
Well, they can say that, as Jaime said, they can say that as to the recreation fee.
Understood.
They can't
Another
do it
fee.
as to this fee.
To this fee, okay. Fine, all righty.
Okay, so we'll have that, we can have we'll have the change to the addition to the fee schedule for next week. So that, because we'll also have the public hearing with regard to 31 Croton Avenue at the same time.
Right, if we ever get an intern, Karen, or somebody that wants to do for PACE or any other law school, somebody to do an audit, or even the auditors, and look at some of our constructions for the past 10, I don't know, a year, 2 years, and run it from A through Z and see what the average fee structure looks like for somebody doing the work. to Dana's point, it would be, then we would have some data points of what, like somebody who builds like 10 units and more, 50 units and more, 1 unit, like we spent a lot of our meetings discussing fees, and we'll do again the budgets, and it really doesn't feel like we actually have data. What we have is comparisons to other municipalities. So you sit there and wonder, are we all doing it well, or do we all do it badly and follow each other down the rabbit hole? But it's not so based on actual data clusters. So it would be really great to get somebody to look at this objectively, and not the people who will have to be taken off their jobs. Whether it's an auditing company, I mean, it would just make these meetings go 5 minutes instead of 5 hours. And still we walk away going, like, I don't know, like, what are we basing it on? So it would be helpful, especially with building. It shouldn't be that hard. I mean, we know what people have built for the last 3 years. We should be able to see what fees we charge them, and how many are there, and what are the total.
I would be interested in that too, because I just feel like without this sort of information, I mean, does the person in question with the project, did they know this fee was going to come? Is it a surprise fee? Is it a fee that they were I don't know. It's like,
Yeah, I did speak with the person who has this project, and I also spoke with him about the proposal that was coming in front of you, the exact number that was coming in front of you, and he thought that was fine. He did, he had concerns that he was going to be asked to pay $50,000, which was going to make him sort of walk away from the request.
Yeah, because the truth about developers, and I've sat down in New Rochelle and looked at some of this stuff, is they get fees in terms of tens of thousands, not in terms of hundreds. Tens of thousands. That's what they're like when they plan. Because if you look at a 30-year amortization of what they make on some of the buildings, as much as people talk about how they don't make money, the truth is $7,500 is 3 months of not even of extra rent.
well, I can understand how a big building, you've got the big buildings and you've got a smaller developer.
Yeah, but we're agreeing. I'm just pointing out that it's just a matter of perspective of what, to answer the question of what are they used to. A person building a 2-family house for the first time is different, but people who build 10 units and up or 6 units and up on more regular basis, yeah. Anyway, I think we should know this stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Well, we may not be able to know every law, but we should at least be able to look at data points to make decisions that exist already.
I think there is some data that exists, so we will.
Karen, you muted.
I believe we actually do have, there is some, none of this is completely arbitrary. So, but I think that, Mayor, to your point, we can provide that information so we have a greater understanding of how these fees are developed. This is, I think this concludes our agenda for this evening. It was a long one.
Yep.
If we could have a motion to go into executive session for matters of personnel, and Karen, if you could just let Jacqueline and the chief know, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes the work session, and hopefully we'll see folks again next week for a legislative session.
Thank you. Thanks,
Have a
Jaime.
good evening.
Everybody.
Yeah.